Chapter 42:31, Opening the Door. The divine rune patterns in the projection continuously shifted, displaying all sorts of living beings. Among the creatures woven from these patterns were three types, some that Lin Moyu had seen and recognized, some that he had never seen before, and a third kind that he had encountered only in passing but whose names he did not know. The nascent beings in these rune images encompassed all worlds, ranging from the tiny like ants and beetles to enormous beasts, as well as a great variety of cultivators. Within the projection, the heavenly void tower rotated slowly without pause. The 8 doors constantly changed their images. These are all the living beings throughout the entire domain. Lin Moyu suddenly realized that the patterns displayed on the 8 doors of the heavenly void tower were not illusions, but depictions of the myriad living beings nurtured by the many worlds of the domain without a single omission, all manifested through divine runes, vivid and lifelike. To stand for a time before the heavenly void tower would be to witness all the life forms that existed in the entire domain. It was simply incomprehensible. What he was seeing now was only a projection. If he truly stood before the doors themselves, the experience might be even more stunning. As he studied the projection and worked to decipher the divine runes, Lin Moyu also reflected. These projections were so realistic, and since they could be used directly to unlock the doors, it was clear they were not ordinary images. It must have been some technique from the master of the Heavenly Void Palace connecting the projection and the real doors directly. Time passed, second by second. Lin Moyu became absorbed in the process. Never before had he seen such a display and transformation of divine runes. Proficient in divine runes himself, he found them deeply fascinating. Now, he was not just seeking to break open the doors, but to understand the subtle mysteries hidden within these divine runes. He had the feeling that only by thoroughly grasping the many profound principles within the runes and achieving mastery could he discover a way to enter the 9th floor and finally solve all the riddles. The tree sovereign waited patiently. Having existed here for countless years, it no longer remembered what it was to feel anxious. In the sky above, the fairy of tribulation floated, radiating a dim, oppressive aura. The butler, on the other end, hid within the power of the Tao. They were both waiting for Lin Moyu to open the door, hoping to follow him in. Both had entered the heavenly void tower before, but each had only reached the 2nd level. They must know something of what was contained within the tower and now wanted to go back in, aiming to get even higher. Fatty Girl had said the butler had come many times, but as far as she knew, the Kunlun Emperor had not returned. In reality, after escaping the Heavenly Void Palace with the Fairy of Tribulation, the Kunlun Emperor had used the fairy to return multiple times only. During those times, Fatty Girl had not been aware. Lin Moyu had now sorted out his thinking and had also considered whether or not to let them enter with him. According to the master of the Heavenly Void Palace's intentions, if several people entered at the same time, conflict would be inevitable. No one wants others to accompany them in, especially the one who had opened the way, as no one wants to be taken advantage of. But Lin Moyu intended to do the opposite. He did not want to stop the Kunlun Emperor or the butler. As long as they were willing to pay a price, he would permit them through. As for what price, Lin Moyu already had something in mind. His reason for making this decision was that he refused to act according to the designs of the Heavenly Void Palace Master. Time ticked by, and for 10 days Lin Moyu sat completely motionless. Fatty Girl was so bored that she curled up at the side and fell fast asleep, as she couldn't make sense of the runes at all and would rather sleep. After 10 days, Lin Moyu finally acted. He placed his finger on the projection and, passing through it, appeared before the gate of the Heavenly Void Tower. His fingertip glowed slightly. Using his soul force as ink, he drew out one divine rune after another. The runes floated in the air, accompanied by crisp crackling sounds as they split apart on the spot. Though the runes appeared torn, they still remained faintly connected, broken but not severed, and still able to function. More and more runes split, only to rejoin and recombine into what appeared a chaotic yet distinctly organized rune. This rune, dizzyingly complicated and almost like mysterious script, in fact now constituted a formation. The rune shone with light and then flew into one of the tower's doors, fitting precisely into a missing space in the pattern upon the door. Boom! The heavenly void tower burst with radiance that shot straight into the clouds, the ground shaking and rumbling continuously, as if in celebration of Lin Moyu's accomplishment. The tree sovereign murmured, "Not bad, only 10 days to open the first door. You are much faster than those two others." Lin Moyu asked, "How long did it take them?" The tree sovereign replied, "The one inside the Fairy of Tribulation took 99 years, the other took 95. Both took nearly a century, while Lin Moyu had only used a handful of days. The difference was enormous." As the radiance faded, the heavenly void tower returned to calm. One of the 8 doors was now fully open, 7 remained. From the open door, the divine runes flowed like water into the adjacent door. That door shimmered with a faint light, its runes rapidly becoming still more intricate, making the task even harder. Meanwhile, the other 6 doors dimmed, as if falling into slumber. Suddenly, Lin Moyu realized that he would have to open that specific next door in order to continue, and only after that could he try to open the rest. This too was a rule set by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The first door could be any, but from the second onward they must be opened in order, and each door's difficulty would increase beyond the last, not simply by a multiple but drastically. There was no brute forcing the later doors by sheer time. If you couldn't figure it out, then no matter how long you tried, you wouldn't succeed. No wonder the Kunlun Emperor and the butler had each only opened 2 doors. The first one took them a century or so, the second at least several thousand, perhaps tens of thousands of years. The third probably exceeded their ability, and even 1,000,000 years would be futile. Lin Moyu muttered to himself, already clear on the reason for all this. He now focused his attention on the second door, regarding its even more complex divine runes, and began the new round of decoding. The difficulty was indeed much higher, but his interest only burned stronger. He had already realized that the Heavenly Void Palace Master's mastery of runes surpassed his own for now. But this process of cracking open the doors was itself a path of cultivation, through which he could comprehend more of the rune's mysteries and eventually, perhaps even surpass the master himself. Silence fell again all around. Fatty Girl slumbered on, and the tree sovereign was wordless. At some point, the devastated ancient forest began to recover. Sprouts poked up from the earth, silently growing at a tremendous rate, becoming towering trees in just a few dozen days. Some powerful saplings quietly took the place of the former tree kings, their auras slowly building up to become the new tree kings. At this pace, it would take only a few hundred days for the ancient forest to fully recover. Thus, the tree sovereign paid no heed to casualties. It could restore things fast enough. 100 days later, Lin Moyu acted again. Just like before, his finger passed through the projection and appeared before the second gate of the tower. At his fingertip, a flood of divine runes burst out, then shattered and recombined, finally assembling into a runic formation severalfold more complex than before. The rune formation seemed fractured, yet contained its own internal logic. With a push of his finger, the runes shot into the door. With a low rumble, the second great door slowly opened. Chapter 42:32, actually not that difficult. Looking at the rainbow light shooting into the sky, Lin Moyu asked, "How long did it take them to open the second door?" The tree sovereign answered slowly, 9,674 years and 7,588 years, respectively. The tree sovereign remembered it clearly. If Lin Moyu wanted, it could give the precise time down to the second. The Kunlun Emperor spent 99 years on the first door. The second door took nearly 100 times longer. The butler spent 95 years on the first, and about 80 times that for the second. Their time difference on the first door wasn't too big, but on the second the gap became very noticeable, which meant there was a real difference in their talent for divine runes. However, both of them stopped there. The third door was already beyond their limits. If your talent isn't enough, no amount of hard work can make up for it. With divine rune arrays, it really isn't just about how much time you spend. If you don't understand, then you simply don't understand. If time alone could solve everything, then all those at the Tao Realm and Tao Lord level in the domain would be experts in divine runes. Clearly, that's not the case. As the second door opened, its runes all flowed into the third door, which became even more complex, the difficulty again increasing by several times. This sharp increase in difficulty meant that the next door might need dozens or even hundreds of times more time, possibly breaking through your limit entirely. A faint smile appeared on Lin Moyu's lips. He was more and more intrigued and immediately threw himself into breaking down the third door. After opening 2 doors in a row, he gained a lot, not the satisfaction of solving the puzzle but a deepening of his understanding of divine runes. He was not just opening doors, he was comprehending the Tao of divine runes left behind by the heavenly Void Palace Master. Opening the gates was secondary, the most important thing was inheriting the knowledge. If Lin Moyu only wanted to open the door as fast as possible, he could go even faster. The first door he could have done in, at most, 2 days. There was no need for 10 days at all. The second door would have taken him 5 days. Any extra time was devoted to studying the Heavenly Void Palace Master's formation Tao. But Lin Moyu didn't tell anyone this. The Tree Sovereign was already shocked at Lin Moyu's speed. After all, others measured their time in years while Lin Moyu moved forward in days. Just 300 days later, Lin Moyu took action again. A flood of runes shot out, split apart and entwined, forming incredibly complex patterns. What? The Tree Sovereign gave a slight sound of surprise, marveling that Lin Moyu had solved the third door in just 300 days. It had thought Lin Moyu would at least need several decades. He hadn't even taken a full year. It also noticed that Lin Moyu was drawing runes even faster than before, barely pausing. His proficiency had greatly improved. Suddenly the Tree Sovereign realized Lin Moyu was making astonishing progress. Maybe he really can open all 8 doors. This thought suddenly leapt up in the Tree Sovereign's heart, shaking its soul with excitement. Lin Moyu sensed the Tree Sovereign's agitation and silently thought, "It looks like the Tree Sovereign really does hope I can open all 8 doors. Does it also want to enter the Heavenly Void Tower, or is there some other reason?" As the rainbow light faded, the runes from the first 3 doors all flowed into the fourth, and the difficulty again rose. Lin Moyu drew his mind in tight and began analyzing the 4th door. His acceleration was a result of digesting a portion of the runic knowledge left behind by the Heavenly Void Palace Master. The runes on the doors looked complicated, but there was a logic to them. Ultimately, it was always those same core runes being split apart, then recombined with others. As long as he could firmly grasp those core fixed runes, solving the puzzle would be straightforward and he'd go faster and faster. For most people, it would get harder and harder the farther they went, but for Lin Moyu, the later gates actually became easier. He was learning, he was inheriting, and gradually making these divine runes his own. With that, he was able to draw analogies between patterns and comprehend everything in a flash. Just 500 days later, Lin Moyu made another move, beginning to break down the 4th door. Such a fast pace once again shocked the Tree Sovereign. It wasn't only the Tree Sovereign, the presence in the Fairy of Tribulation was equally shocked. Even the Fairy of Tribulation itself trembled, and the butler within the Way of the Tao was shifting shapes in surprise. Both of them had spent nearly 10,000 years on the 2nd door and gave up on the 3rd. Lin Moyu opened the 4th door in only 500 days. The difference in accomplishment was enough to cause despair. Lin Moyu didn't care what others thought. He had already started studying the 5th door. He had now digested most of the Heavenly Void Palace Master's divine rune knowledge, which made his pace only increase. The 5th door gathered together all the runes from the previous 4 doors and looked as complex as could be, but Lin Moyu had already fully grasped its structure, and no matter how complex, he could quickly find the key. Unconsciously, Lin Moyu had already mastered its essence. This time, after just 400 days, Lin Moyu unlocked the 5th door. His decoding speed not only showed no sign of slowing, it kept getting faster completely against reason. But in Lin Moyu's view, this was only natural because he had truly mastered the mysteries within the divine runes. Another 300 days passed, and the 6th door was opened. After that, only 200 days more, and the 7th door was opened. At last, it was time for the 8th and final door. Its surface was densely covered by runes without the slightest gap. All the runes from the previous 8 doors had gathered here, For an ordinary person, a single glance would be enough to shatter their soul. Dizziness and confusion were nothing compared to these runes. It was in a completely different league. The images on the door kept changing. All kinds of living beings from the domain appeared before Lin Moyu's eyes. He could vaguely hear the shouts and cries of these beings as the runes became more numerous and the creatures evolved ever more real. Lin Moyu had the strange sense that the Heavenly Void Palace Master seemed to want to use runes to create living beings, but, for now at least, it was just short of success. After watching for a while, Lin Moyu raised his head and said to the Tree Sovereign, "Senior, remember your promise." The Tree Sovereign spoke in a deep voice, "Can you really unlock it?" There was clear, tightly restrained excitement in its tone. It dearly hoped Lin Moyu could break the 8th door, but also knew the 8th was the most difficult. Even for itself, looking at those runes made its own heart uneasy. Lin Moyu said, "I can. The 8th door is actually the easiest one." Hi. Something so complicated and it was easier than those before, how could that be possible? The Tree Sovereign didn't think Lin Moyu was spouting nonsense and chose to believe him. "As long as you can open the 8th door, my promise will absolutely hold." Lin Moyu said, "Good." As he spoke, he pressed his finger into the projection and appeared before the 8th door. With his soul as ink, he formed a single rune, a rune that did not crack but was complex and complete. Lin Moyu spoke calmly, "Actually, the 8th door is the simplest. Here, all the runes of the previous doors are gathered together. Although they remain balanced, this balance is weak. A single disruption breaks it and the door will open." The Tree Sovereign faintly understood this, but while it could see the principle, it could never actually do it. Not everyone can break such a balance. If someone can, it means their mastery of runes already exceeds that of the one who set it up. Lin Moyu finished his rune and pressed it in. The rune turned into light and fused into the door. Boom! The Heavenly Void Tower shook violently, an unprecedented radiance soaring into the sky. The 8 gates fully opened. The first floor of the Heavenly Void Tower vanished, and the entire tower now floated in the air. Chapter 42-33, Let's Negotiate. The entire first floor of the Heavenly Void Tower vanished, leaving the tower itself suspended, crystal clear, in midair. Lin Moyu asked, "Is the Heavenly Void Tower normally like this?" The Tree Sovereign shook its head, "I don't know, I've never seen this before." Well, the Tree Sovereign was just a gatekeeper, having no idea was normal. Suddenly, a beam of iridescent light shot down from the Heavenly Void Tower and landed perfectly on the Tree Sovereign. Thunder rumbled from the Tree Sovereign as if some kind of shackle had just been broken. An enormous surge of soul force erupted from within the Tree Sovereign, sweeping out in a hurricane. Lin Moyu was blown helplessly away. Fatty Girl, who was sleeping soundly, was also sent tumbling through the air. The Fairy of Tribulation and the Butler were both blown far off and found it hard to approach for a while. A hole opened above the Tree Sovereign's head. As the space of the Heavenly Void cracked open and soul force from beyond began to pour in, Lin Moyu suddenly understood why the Tree Sovereign had hoped he could open all 8 doors, because, under the rules set by the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace, the Tree Sovereign was the gatekeeper. Even after it had achieved the Chaos Realm, it was still trapped here, serving as guardian. The tower itself was a shackle. By unlocking the 8 doors, Lin Moyu had set it free. Now it could enter the chaos and obtain freedom. But chaos is hardly a friendly place. While the Tree Sovereign had gained its freedom, it would also face new dangers. Lin Moyu could already sense the presence of chaotic beings from the passage. The Tree Sovereign looked at Lin Moyu. "Thank you for helping break my shackles. I will enter the chaos now, but I will not forget my promise. One day when you seek me there, I will honor it." As it spoke, a piece of gleaming green heartwood split from the Tree Sovereign and flew into Lin Moyu's hand. This was the Tree Sovereign's heartwood, one of its most crucial possessions, like a dragon's pearl. In giving a piece to Lin Moyu, it was extending a promise. In the future, he would be able to use it to find the Tree Sovereign. Lin Moyu bowed slightly. "Congratulations, Senior, on gaining your freedom. I wish you a safe journey." The Tree Sovereign let out a gentle laugh. All its branches retracted in an instant and then stabbed into the spatial passage. Wails echoed from the tunnel as the Tree Sovereign tore chaotic beings to pieces. The ancient forest shook violently, every ancient tree drilling into the earth at once, the land rupturing around the tree's sovereign. The tree sovereign lifted itself from the earth, its mass of tangled roots finally revealed to Lin Moyu. He was deeply shocked. The tree sovereign's roots were unimaginably vast by now. The entire forest, it turned out, grew atop those roots. Even the tree kings all sprouted from the tree sovereign's root system. It could be said that the ancient trees and even the tree kings were just branches and offshoots of the tree sovereign. They each had their own independent souls and lives, and yet were still subsidiary beings of the tree sovereign, a rather unique existence. Lin Moyu gave a wry smile. After fighting the ancient forest for so long, it turned out he'd been battling only the tree sovereign's appendages. What kind of tree was the tree sovereign to have reached this point? As the tree sovereign rose skyward, its form gradually shrank, then floated into the chaos tunnel. Throughout, soul force howled. No one could approach until the sovereign had fully departed and things returned to normal. The ancient ground was left full of holes and scars. Restoring it would take some time. With a thought, Lin Moyu unleashed billions of undead servants and sent them surging at the heavenly void tower. The tower's restriction had now lifted, so anyone could enter. The undead surrounded the first level of the tower inside and out, forming layer after layer of guards. Their task was to encircle the tower and prevent anyone else from entering. This gave Lin Moyu bargaining chips in any negotiation. Of course, the Fairy of Tribulation and the butler could still try to force their way in, but if they did, it would mean open war with Lin Moyu. Given Lin Moyu's temperament, he'd rather fight, even to mutual destruction, than back down. If anyone wanted to profit at his expense, no way. Lin Moyu called out loudly, "Gentlemen, let's have a discussion." The Fairy of Tribulation drifted over, a rough and somewhat hoarse voice echoing out, "I did not expect you to grow so fast." Lin Moyu recognized the voice, replying calmly, "Is that you, Emperor Jin?" After a few seconds' silence, the fairy's voice answered again, "It is." Lin Moyu felt a jolt of apprehension. Clearly, after the Kunlun Emperor had obtained the fairy back then, something else had happened since. Just then, the butler floated over too, his form shifting amid the Tao force. "You could say I'm about half the same as before, but not completely." A cold snort issued from inside the fairy. "Butler, you meddle too much." The butler chuckled, "I am the butler, it's my job to meddle, am I wrong?" The Fairy of Tribulation gave no response, tacitly accepting the butler's comment. Lin Moyu realized the butler must know what happened, so asked directly, "What exactly happened inside the Fairy of Tribulation?" The butler laughed, "Not much, really. Some lingering wills in the fairy fused with the Kunlun Emperor, but it's still the Kunlun Emperor in control. He's just grown a bit different from how he was at first. Of course, to most people, he's still the Kunlun Emperor." A cold snort echoed from the fairy, "Enough nonsense. Fellow Lin, I want to enter the Heavenly Void Tower. Tell me your terms, I will try to satisfy them." Lin Moyu responded, "Before that, keep your previous promise to me." No matter what change had occurred to the Kunlun Emperor, what mattered to Lin Moyu was the fifth gemstone. The Emperor had once promised that as long as Lin Moyu found the fourth gemstone, he would give him the fifth. The presence in the fairy went silent again, apparently troubled by Lin Moyu's request. Lin Moyu's brow furrowed, he sensed something was off. The butler chuckled, "He does possess the Fairy of Tribulation, but the fairy is special. Not everything inside it is up to him." "Enough," the Kunlun Emperor roared, cutting off the butler. The butler kept smiling, not the least bit offended. The Kunlun Emperor finally said, "Fellow Lin, first let me apologize for this. I did obtain the Fairy of Tribulation, but it's a special vessel. My authority isn't absolute within it." At this, Lin Moyu understood. His tone grew cold, "So you can't give me the fifth gemstone after all." As he spoke, Lin Moyu was already preparing to fight, but the Kunlun Emperor hurriedly said, "Not so, I have another way." Lin Moyu said coldly, "Speak." The Kunlun Emperor said, "I can give up the fairy and let you take it for yourself if you wish." Lin Moyu wasn't convinced. "Would you really give it up?" The Kunlun Emperor replied, "I am only a step away from final transcendence. If you allow me into the heavenly void tower, I promise I will leave the ferry for you. Lin Moyu thought for a moment, then said, "Hand over the ferry of tribulation now. Let me refine it before I let you into the tower. If you do not agree, I will take what's mine myself." Chapter 42-34, Not Understanding the Great Tao. Lin Moyu wasn't negotiating, his tone was a final ultimatum. Once the Ferry of Tribulation had seemed too mysterious and powerful for him to ever face. If a Tao Lord entered the ferry, they would lose their minds and become slaves. Even a great Tao Lord would find it almost impossible to return. This was because the being inside the ferry was half-step chaos. The Kunlun Emperor himself, even an eternal who entered, would be in real trouble. But now, even though Lin Moyu's cultivation was only at the eternal level, his combat power had long since surpassed eternity. He could even briefly unleash the destructive force of Chaos Realm. Now, even if he entered the ferry again, he felt confident he could fight his way out. Both Lin Moyu and the Kunlun Emperor understood this well, which was why the Ferry of Tribulation was being so civil with Lin Moyu here. Otherwise, it would have already tried to force its way through. Beings of this level don't usually speak nicely. Power is always leverage. Wherever you are, it's a universal truth. The butler watched as the Ferry of Tribulation fell silent, and Lin Moyu presented unwavering pressure, a little surprised. By all rights, the Kunlun Emperor should not be bowing and scraping like this, and the butler began to wonder if Lin Moyu had some hidden advantage, and if perhaps he himself should be a little more polite and make more concessions when it came time for his own negotiation. But the butler didn't know Lin Moyu's strength was not the only reason for his aggressive stance. He also had his own reasons. The last time he had entered the ferry, Lin Moyu had already detected something was different about the Kunlun Emperor's attitude toward him. The Emperor must have found something out, and that was why he behaved differently toward Lin Moyu. This, too, became part of Lin Moyu's bargaining leverage, allowing him to push further within a certain limit. But Lin Moyu didn't push too far. Overall, he stayed within what the other party could accept. As he waited a few seconds without reply, Lin Moyu's aura began to surge, as if he was about to strike. The Kunlun Emperor finally spoke up before Lin Moyu ran out of patience. "Fine, I agree. I hope you can keep your word." Lin Moyu replied calmly, "Don't worry, when I Lin say something I always keep my word." The Kunlun Emperor sighed, "You truly don't go back on your word." Then, a figure slowly materialized atop the Ferry of Tribulation. Lin Moyu immediately recognized him as the Kunlun Emperor, and at that moment the Emperor's voice shifted. "This is my last gamble. If I fail, the worst is utter destruction. The best would be to go quietly back to the spirit domain and fade away." For that fleeting moment, the Kunlun Emperor's true will appeared. Lin Moyu responded, "Look on the bright side. What if you succeed? Besides, your entire great domain was already wrecked by you anyway." The Kunlun Emperor replied softly, "To gain, you must pay a price. I've done all this, schemed for endless years, countless people have sacrificed for me, and that was their fate. A whole great domain, countless worlds, innumerable living beings, all summed up by a single word: destiny." Lin Moyu didn't comment on this. To him, the Kunlun Emperor's approach was only natural. But when it comes to karma, who can really see it all? Even half-step chaos, and perhaps even those who reach true chaos realm, can't necessarily escape karma. Unfortunately, as a Void Emperor, the Kunlun Emperor's understanding of the Great Tao was biased. There were many things he did not comprehend. The Kunlun Emperor gave a sharp cry, his aura abruptly changing as he severed his connection with the Ferry of Tribulation. To a vessel spirit, this meant true freedom. But for the Kunlun Emperor, he was still a step away. The Ferry of Tribulation shrank into Lin Moyu's hand, turning into a decorative object less than half a meter long. Lin Moyu infused his soul into the ferry, imprinting it with his spiritual brand. The whole process went exceedingly smoothly, costing him almost no effort. The Kunlun Emperor watched, and his expression clearly changed. He knew very well that refining the ferry should not have been that easy, but Lin Moyu did it effortlessly, which reassured him that his own decision was not a mistake. Lin Moyu put away the Ferry of Tribulation. Even though he was eager to obtain the fifth gemstone, now was not the time. He turned to the butler and asked bluntly, "Senior, what price are you prepared to pay?" The butler chuckled, "This old man has nothing particular of value, there's only one thing I can offer." "Let's hear it." Lin Moyu wanted to know if the butler's offer matched his own expectations. The butler explained, "You should know this is the 5th-generation Heavenly Void Palace. Besides this one there are 4 more. I know their exact locations and I possess an array that can teleport you directly to the front of any of them. In this domain of the Heavenly Void there are many dangers. Lin Dao friend, even though you are strong, you don't really need to go looking for trouble and wasting time on these perils." Once the butler left the Heavenly Void, the layout of formations here wouldn't matter anymore, and so this was the only thing he could use as leverage in this deal. Lin Moyu did not immediately answer but looked to the Kunlun Emperor. "Is what he says true?" The Kunlun Emperor replied quietly, "It's true, there are indeed many weird and dangerous beings around here. You are strong but don't expect to win every time." The butler added, "In the map I give you, all those dangerous locations are marked, which will save you a lot of trouble." Lin Moyu thought for a while. "All right, it's a deal, but you must give me the item first." "That's natural," replied the butler, instantly condensing a glowing jade tablet that flew into Lin Moyu's hand. Examining it, Lin Moyu saw a map, thoroughly marking every region, all the dangers, and the locations of the other Heavenly Void palaces. The teleportation array he mentioned was not far away. It could send him directly to any one of the palaces. Lin Moyu said, "Very well, since the deal is struck, let's go in." His undead servants immediately cleared 8 pathways, each one leading straight to a different tower gate. Lin Moyu made a pleased gesture, letting them freely choose whichever entrance they wanted. The Kunlun Emperor quickly chose a door, turned into a beam of light and shot toward what had previously been the 4th door. The butler selected the position of the 5th door and entered in a swirl of Dao clouds. After they went inside, Lin Moyu recalled his undead servants and murmured to himself, "Actually, it doesn't matter which door you enter, they're all the same. There's really no need to pick." Earlier, when Lin Moyu had been solving the first layer, he realized that these gates were nothing but switches for each floor. The more doors you open, the higher a level of the tower you can access. As for which one you enter, it makes no difference. That's why you can open the first door from anywhere. The master of the Heavenly Void Palace hid a lot of information within the 8 doors. Those who understand will understand. Lin Moyu approached the Heavenly Void Tower, gazing at the now floated first floor and chuckled, "What a clever technique, Palace Master. If I hadn't probed further, I'd have been fooled too." Chapter 42-35, the 9th floor. When breaking down the 8 great doors, Lin Moyu discovered something special. Each door contained a unique divine rune within. This rune was present yet did not participate in the transformations of the other runes in the door, it simply existed there. Moreover, when one door was unlocked, this particular rune would vanish with it. It would not flow into the next door. Every door had one such special rune, making 8 in total across the 8 doors. Individually, the 8 runes were meaningless, but combined together they were entirely different. There were dozens of ways to combine the 8 runes, allowing them to form dozens of new runes, and these runes could in turn be combined into numerous arrays. The possible array combinations were nearly endless. However, the master of the Heavenly Void Palace had also provided clues, visible both on the tower itself and on the 8 doors. Lin Moyu approached the Heavenly Void Tower. The first floor had vanished, and the 8 remaining layers were concealed within clouds. He slowly ascended into the mist to study the tower's body. The tower itself bore many designs as well, and the clues were hidden within them. The mist was made of Dao force, and as soon as Lin Moyu entered, the Dao force pressed down on him. He didn't bother figuring out the rules here and simply relied on brute strength to withstand it. The Dao force, like countless giant hands, pressed down with the intent to crush Lin Moyu to a pulp. For a great Dao Lord, being here for 10 breaths would see them smashed to pieces, body and soul alike. Even an eternal would struggle to last long. But Lin Moyu moved through it without any difficulty. All the pressure was divided among his undead servants and the vast world he commanded, so he was unaffected. What he feared least were these sustained, endlessly pressing but not explosive attacks. Lin Moyu examined the tower closely and found that the images on its surface corresponded exactly to the images found on the doors. Though the tower's images did not change, they were fixed, and even clearer and richer than the constantly changing images on the doors. Comparing the two, the images produced by the doors were always missing something compared to those on the tower. The clue lay in what was missing. Recalling every image he had previously seen, Lin Moyu scanned his memory and compared them in detail to those on the tower's body, pinpointing every point of absence. He then took the 8 divine runes, combining, overlaying, and rearranging them to fill those gaps in the pattern. Repeating this process again and again, a framework for a formation gradually began to take shape in his mind. As more and more elements came together, Lin Moyu was able to follow the thread to completion and construct the formation in its entirety. After several hundred days, Lin Moyu finally finished outlining the entire array in his mind. The array did not look so complex at first glance, but in reality it was comprised of 8 fragments, the very runes he'd obtained from each door. Through this process, Lin Moyu had opened a new gateway into the Tao of Divine Runes. The arrangement set by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace was designed to gradually pass on his knowledge of divine runes. In order to break through, a person had to fully grasp all of his rune teachings, only then could they truly solve the puzzle. Lin Moyu slowly ascended, drawing ever closer to the 9th floor of the Heavenly Void Tower. Within the 9th floor, there was a blank space. This was the entrance. Drawing upon all he had sketched in his mind, Lin Moyu recreated the formation perfectly and then gave a gentle forward push. The formation shot into the blank space, forming a new image that blended perfectly with the other images across the tower, harmoniously completing the pattern. Hum! A deep sound rang out, reverberating like a heavy drum upon the soul. Fatty Girl let out a little yelp, her plump face contorted with discomfort. As that reverberation boomed, the Tao force surrounding the Heavenly Void Tower transformed into a tornado, rushing toward the tower. The tower's body became a vortex, sucking up every last drop of Tao force until none remained, and in that instant all pressure vanished. The images spun on the tower's body, weaving like dragons around its surface. Once they were sated with Tao force before Lin Moyu's eyes, the 9th floor of the Heavenly Void Tower, the 9th door slowly opened. Only now did Fatty Girl snap to herself and exclaim in surprise, "So the entrance to the 9th floor of the Heavenly Void Tower isn't from inside at all." Lin Moyu chuckled, "If you search within and find nothing, sometimes the way forward isn't inside but outside." With that, Lin Moyu stepped through the gate, and the scene before his eyes changed. A starry sky appeared. A flicker of surprise flashed in his gaze. This starry sky seemed familiar to him. He recalled that at the very start of his cultivation, when he first awakened his skills, the skill demonstration had displayed such a starry sky. During the skill demonstration, he'd seen this kind of starfield. Later, when he entered the greater world, he guessed this starry sky must be somewhere in that world, and he even sought it out deliberately but never found anything similar. After he became the lord of the greater world with all its secrets at his command, still he never located a starry sky like this one. They might all look similar, but to Lin Moyu, each starfield had its own unique character. Now, what he saw was nearly identical to what had appeared during the skill demonstration. Just then, an artifact appeared from the void behind him. Lin Moyu reached back and caught it. It was the true form of the Domain Rivers and Mountains Order. With Fatty Girl following Lin Moyu inside, she reverted to her true form and could not manifest visibly. There was no longer any sound from Fatty Girl. She seemed to have fallen deeply asleep. Lin Moyu immediately knew it was the space here that was suppressing her. Since she was an artifact forged by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace, it was as easy as breathing for the master to suppress her in this domain. "So you have finally arrived." A heavy voice echoed out from the depths of the starry sky, where a bright star path stretched out and ended at Lin Moyu's feet. If he was not mistaken, the voice belonged to the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The words were, "You have finally arrived." This meant he'd been waiting for Lin Moyu all along. Lin Moyu felt certain that when the master said "you," he meant him and no one else. The greatest secret of the Heavenly Void Palace was about to be revealed, perhaps one tied to the fate of the entire domain, or even far beyond. There was no use in overthinking. If he wanted answers, he had to step forward. He set foot on the star path, and with each brilliant radiance the stars receded swiftly while carrying Lin Moyu ever deeper into the starry expanse. The starry sky was vast, countless stars sparkling in every direction, but they were far away and gone in a flash. Even with Lin Moyu's formidable eyesight, he couldn't make out their finer details. At his clearest, all he could see was the glow diffusing from the stars, bringing a touch of light. At last, the star path reached its destination. Lin Moyu no longer knew how far he had traveled. The journey along the star path wasn't conventional flight, but rather warping through the void with a series of teleports. Lin Moyu couldn't even retrace his steps. The catastrophic scepter silently appeared in his hand. This was his greatest trump card, and if any danger arose, he might need it to survive. At the end of the star path, a giant boulder floated 1,000 meters long and wide, nearly square and 5 or 6 meters thick. Lin Moyu saw that on top of the boulder there was a patch of grass and blooming flowers. In the middle of the grass stood a simple thatched hut. Since he'd come all this way, there was no reason to hesitate now. Lin Moyu stepped onto the boulder, followed a narrow trail through the grass, and arrived before the hut. The door slowly opened and a gentle breeze wafted out. At that instant, the breeze transformed into sword chi, erupting in the surrounding void. Chapter 42-36, The Heavenly Void Land and the Heavenly Void Palace. Countless sword lights flashed past Lin Moyu, streaking off into the distance and exploding amid the stars. Each sword light was lethal enough to slay even an Eternal. To those who stood at the very peak of the domain, the ultimate Eternals facing this sword light would be as helpless as children. If that sword light struck him, he too would die, but he could be reborn, so there was no real danger for him. What struck Lin Moyu as truly strange was that, despite their ferocity, the sword lights actively avoided him. What shocked Lin Moyu even more was the source of the sword lights, a lone blade of grass planted before the thatched hut. Earlier, when the door had opened, a faint breeze had blown and stirred that blade of grass, igniting this frenzy of sword light. This blade of grass was a wondrous treasure, of a truly unfathomable grade. Footsteps sounded and a figure stepped out from behind the door. His whole form was ethereal and indistinct. Lin Moyu could not make out his features. He came to the door, reached out, and pulled up the little blade of grass by the roots. The grass erupted with another burst of sword light, which the man easily snuffed out with a pinch of his fingers. Watching this, Lin Moyu realized the stranger's power had reached an unimaginable level. In his memory, perhaps only the two robed elders' green robe and white robe could compare to this strength. After uprooting the blade of grass, the figure tossed it aside casually. A stray weed growing by the door. You weren't frightened, were you, fellow Taoist? Lin Moyu gave a respectful bow. Lin Moyu gives greetings, senior. This man was simply far too powerful. Lin Moyu knew that, should he ever cross swords with him, he would have no hope of victory. The sense of helplessness here was even greater than when he had faced the Tree Sovereign, so he was honest and extremely polite. The figure let out a soft laugh. No need to be so formal, Taoist. I am but a sliver of a lingering soul, subsisting here for countless years, hardly worthy of being called a senior. At these words, Lin Moyu felt thunderstruck in his heart, barely able to steady his Tao mind. Such overwhelming power, yet only a mere remnant soul. Just this fragment alone could annihilate Eternals and suppress even those of Chaos Realm. How powerful must the true body have been? Lin Moyu could not imagine. The figure moved to the front of the hut and with a wave of his hand made two meditation mats appear on the grass. He gestured for Lin Moyu to sit. I have no real belongings to offer, please forgive the meagerness and make do for now. Lin Moyu had nothing to object to and settled himself on the mat, very much knowing his place. The figure sat as well, saying calmly, when I set things up long ago, I required strength, wisdom, and talent. All were essential. Since you have made it here, you have already proven your ability, fellow Taoist. Lin Moyu asked quietly, Senior, are you the master of the Heavenly Void Palace? From the misty figure came a soft chuckle. Perhaps I once was, after all my name is Wushi 5th generation. His words left Lin Moyu a bit puzzled. What did he mean by, perhaps I once was? The ambiguity in the statement held too many implications and was far from certain. If you analyzed it deeply, it almost seemed as if even he couldn't be sure he had ever truly been the Heavenly Void Palace Master. To wield this kind of strength yet still lack certainty what exactly was the Heavenly Void Palace. With a chuckle, 5th generation asked, Taoist, how do you see this Heavenly Void land and the Heavenly Void Palace? Lin Moyu shook his head. This junior's knowledge is lacking, I have no real opinion. 5th said, sometimes abstaining from wild speculation is actually a wise course. You are clever undoubtedly, you must have pondered many possibilities, but in the end, guesses are just guesses, not facts. Some matters can be questioned in the heart but must never be spoken aloud. A single slip of the tongue can bring great misfortune. Since ancient times, there have been countless mighty ones who understood the heavens, the earth, and even gained insight into chaos itself. Yet compared to the chaos and the universe, the hardest thing of all to fathom is the human heart. Keep everything in your heart and you'll bring no trouble. Voice it, and even if no one else hears, heaven and earth will know. His words made Lin Moyu wary. He immediately recognized the key point and replied, Thank you for the lesson, senior, I understand now. 5th generation was telling him, there are many things that if kept unspoken no matter how much you stir inside only you know. Once released from the lips, even if no one else hears, some being or even the universe itself might sense it, possibly drawing disaster. In the domain this might not happen, but in the chaos beyond, who could say? From his words, Lin Moyu guessed that perhaps in chaos, there really were entities who knew all, like the discerning beast in the domain. Such entities might not be able to read the thoughts of living beings, but 5th said, since you aren't hazarding any guesses as to what the heavenly void is, let me tell you, listen well. Please, senior. Lin Moyu sat up straight, feeling he was about to learn a world-shaking secret. 5th generation said, a domain world must eventually return to the void. Long ago, when the primordial domain world returned to nothingness, it became the heavenly void. From that, the 1st generation Heavenly Void Palace appeared, its master presiding, gathering primal chaos energy, and from that forging sky and earth, creating new domain worlds. He continued step by step, explaining the origin of the Heavenly Void Land and the Heavenly Void Palace, allowing Lin Moyu to gradually understand everything's source. The domain world in which he found himself was known as the 5th generation domain. Long ago, it had a single origin. That origin was known as the primordial domain world. Due to certain reasons, it was destroyed. This destruction was called returning to the void. After the world returned to the void, a region formed that was the Heavenly Void Land. When the Heavenly Void Land first formed, chaos energies gathered there, and from them a palace was formed, the 1st generation Heavenly Void Palace. At that time, it gained a palace master of immense power who sat in the 1st Heavenly Void Palace, fused its might with chaos and used that to forge a new world. The world he forged was called the 1st generation domain. When the 1st generation domain finally also returned to the void, a 2nd Heavenly Void Palace appeared, the 2nd generation Heavenly Void Palace. A new palace master rose and, like before, gathered chaos anew and forged another domain. Each time, as each domain completed its cycle and returned to the void, a new palace arose and a new palace master shouldered the task. This happened 5 times, so the present age is called the 5th generation domain. The name of the domain had been determined from the very beginning, which is why the Torch Dragon had said what he did. Every domain was forged by the contemporary palace master. It was their mission, their destiny. In creating the domain, each master spent all their power, even their life. When the new domain was complete, the palace master perished. There were no exceptions in any generation. The figure before him was the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace Master, born with the mission of forging the 5th domain. Once he completed that mission, he died. But in the process of forging the domain, he developed many doubts. Why did he have to create 5 domains and give his life for that purpose? Why was he chosen to be the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace Master? Where did he come from in the first place? He could not resist his destiny, but though he doubted, he still followed it. Still, those doubts prompted him to take precautions. He didn't use all his power in forging the fifth-generation domain but arranged a plan within the Heavenly Void Palace, planted a fruit with the power of the Tao, and waited for someone to come and unravel his challenge. Because of this, the fifth-generation domain was not perfect and had many flaws. That's why there arose things like chaos-born ferocious beasts which bogged down cultivators, and the imperfection of the domain made it harder for cultivators inside to transcend. But to fifth generation, he did not actually care what happened to the domain. What mattered was whether the puzzle could be solved. And Lin Moyu was the one he was waiting for. Chapter 4237, The Transaction. After listening to fifth generation's explanation, Lin Moyu finally understood why he said, "Perhaps I was once the Heavenly Void Palace Master." There was a deep meaning behind those words. At the time, he indeed was the master, able to control everything about the Heavenly Void Palace. But the Heavenly Void Palace was not his creation, and he didn't even know his own origin. How could such a palace master truly count as a real master? He thought of himself as just a tool, a device for evolving the domain. He even felt that the previous domains and their so-called powerful palace masters were also just tools. He was unwilling to fade away like that, so he wanted to break free from fate. This former fifth-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master, with only clues and feelings to go on, had considered many things and tried to change his outcome. Unable to resist his mission, he could only find alternate methods. He must have tried a number of things, though he did not explain the details. Leaving behind a remnant soul here was one of these attempts. Doubtless he had left other backdoors as well. As Lin Moyu listened, he began to contemplate more deeply, combining this with all that he'd previously learned. He arrived at a deeper realization. The breakthrough point lay with the Spirit Demon clan. The reason the Spirit Demons came to the fifth-generation domain was due to commands from the Heavenly Supreme. And as for why the Supreme would send the Spirit Demons, part of the reason was to help the cultivators of the fifth domain. Otherwise, it might have been destroyed by the beasts or gone in a very bad direction. This means the fifth domain had always been under the Supreme's watchful gaze. Pushing the logic further, the earlier domains most likely were also watched, and perhaps all the domains in all generations were the same, all ultimately directed by the Supreme. If so, anything the fifth-generation Palace Master did was likely known and permitted by the Supreme. A single thought from the Supreme could determine his entire plan's success or failure. Generation after generation of domains, Lin Moyu sensed it was like the endless cycle of reincarnation for living beings. If an ultimate manipulator like the Supreme is behind it all, then he must have his own grand plan. If Lin Moyu rashly got involved, it might not be wise. Suddenly, he was startled by a new possibility. In the Supreme's eyes, domains are nothing. An entire domain could be erased with a wave of his hand. If everything was orchestrated by the Supreme, then an imperfect fifth domain could be destroyed and simply replaced with a sixth, or even a seventh, without hassle. So why go to such trouble to send spirit demons and maintain a balance? There had to be something unique about the fifth domain, some reason why it could not be immediately destroyed. And what was that special factor? Lin Moyu thought about himself and realized it could only be him. The green-robed and white-robed elders were likely the Heavenly Supremes, and both treated him differently, even with a touch of friendliness, showing none of the detachment or disdain one would expect from a transcendent being. Green Robe even imprisoned Ghost Husband, whose avatar was hidden at the core of the domain. Clearly, Ghost Husband was scheming against the domain and so was imprisoned. The basic reason for this, ultimately, was to prevent the domain's collapse. On top of that, the unaging immortality Great Tao was uniquely special. It had come from outside the domain and forcibly entered the origin land. And the only person carrying this immortality Tao was Lin Moyu himself. Piecing everything together, Lin Moyu arrived at a conclusion that shocked him. The only reason the fifth-generation domain still existed was because of him. It was a shocking answer but seemed completely logical. He couldn't find any other explanation. What is so special about me? Lin Moyu wondered. that I'm being given such extraordinary consideration. However, having thought this far, he made up his mind he would participate in the Fifth Palace Master's rebellion. He would use the Palace Master's arrangement to try and figure out what the Supremes truly wanted. After all, maybe his very appearance here, encountering the fifth-generation Palace Master, was already within the Heavenly Supremes' oversight. If there was anything inappropriate, they would have warned him by now. Since they didn't react, maybe it meant they tacitly approved his choice. A game within a game, and Lin Moyu had gradually transformed from a pawn into a player. Now he was about to step onto the grandest chessboard of all, about to see who held the ultimate pieces. How could he possibly turn back now? Lin Moyu said quietly, "So, what do you want me to do, and what can you offer me in return?" Fifth generation replied, "I have always suspected that the other heavenly void palaces hide secrets about our origins, but I cannot enter the other palaces. I hope you can go there and uncover their mysteries. I once had the strange feeling that I might be somehow connected to the first-generation Palace Master. This must also be verified. As for what I can offer you..." He gestured, and 10 blades of grass flew over from afar, each identical to the one before the door that had unleashed sword light. Fifth said, "These are chaos swordgrass. Each one can unleash a sword cut with destructive power comparable to a full-strength blow from a minor accomplishment Chaos Realm cultivator." Minor accomplishment Chaos Realm? Lin Moyu asked. He'd never heard this term before. Fifth generation explained, "The Chaos Realm is a universal stage. I know that some domains use other terms. Once you enter chaos and your body and soul are fully chaotified, you're called a Chaos Realm cultivator. Right after you transcend but before full chaotification, that's called initial entry Chaos Realm. Once you fully chaotify, it's minor accomplishment, and with experience and understanding, you move from minor accomplishment to major accomplishment." Lin Moyu asked, "After achieving major accomplishment, do you become a heavenly supreme?" Fifth generation replied, "After major accomplishment, there is one more level called perfection or domain lord. This is the foundation for becoming a heavenly supreme. If you want to be a supreme, you must wield a domain. If you lack domain power, you can't become a supreme." Lin Moyu realized that the road he'd chosen before had been correct. Without becoming a domain lord, you could never become a supreme. Someone like the Torch Dragon, for example, had chosen the wrong path and limited his future. But something about fifth generation's words struck Lin Moyu as odd. How could he know this in such detail? If he was just a tool, a being raised to evolve the domain for the Supreme's use, he shouldn't know all of this. A tool should understand the processes but not the reasons behind them. Lin Moyu then asked, "Was the Tree Sovereign also one of your arrangements?" Fifth generation replied, "When I was evolving the fifth generation domain, I discovered an ancient yet vibrant seed, so I planted it outside the void. I never expected it would grow so strong, even reaching the Chaos Realm. I drew in chaos energy to help it achieve chaotification, reaching minor accomplishment, and had it guard the Heavenly Void Palace until someone could open the 8 doors. So that's the answer. The Tree Sovereign was minor accomplishment Chaos Realm, while at Lin Moyu's best he could only reach initial entry Chaos Realm. The gap between them was enormous. The higher the realm, the more every difference was infinitely magnified. Those words were indeed true. At this point, fifth generation added, "If you can fulfill my request, I can help you achieve initial chaotification." Initial chaotification, that is, the same state as the Tree Kings. Your flesh and soul would be chaotified in surface, only not yet fully completed, but still a huge leap in power. Lin Moyu had already decided to help him, so with this extra benefit he promptly answered, "Deal." Chapter 4238, All Our Schemes. Seeing that Lin Moyu accepted, fifth generation clearly seemed happy, even a bit excited. His phantom image wavered several times. After countless years of waiting, the person he had hoped for had finally arrived. Fifth smiled softly. "Fellow Taoist, I am truly pleased right now." Lin Moyu could feel his emotions. Even though he was just a wisp of remnant soul, he was no different from a real living being. Fifth said, "Now that you have agreed, let me tell you some things about the various Heavenly Void Palaces and the Heavenly Void domain itself. You've already obtained the Heavenly Void map from the butler, so I won't repeat those details. His array is very effective and allows access to the main gate of each Heavenly Void palace in every era. But as for the interior of those palaces, he actually knows very little. Over countless years, I have made some attempts to explore them and have achieved a few results. Fifth generation, having once been the palace master of the fifth Heavenly Void Palace, understood everything that had taken place in this palace better than anyone. That included how the Kunlun Emperor obtained the Fairy of Tribulation, and how the butler made repeated visits. Everything happened under Fifth's eye. Even the butler's entry was tacitly permitted by him, otherwise the butler could never have come in, nor could the Kunlun Emperor have obtained the Fairy of Tribulation. The more Lin Moyu listened, the more shocked he became. Fifth not only monitored every move Kunlun Emperor and the butler made, but even left marks on them. Kunlun Emperor's acquisition of the Fairy of Tribulation was no accident, it was fate. At the time, the Kunlun Emperor was lost in the palace and happened to stumble across a side door guarded by a puppet. Normally, if he'd simply backed off, the puppet wouldn't have pursued him. But that time, the puppet did not stop because Fifth was manipulating events behind the scenes. With Fifth's unseen guidance, the Kunlun Emperor obtained the Fairy of Tribulation and then used it to break through the palace wall and escape. On the surface, it seemed the Kunlun Emperor became the owner of the Fairy of Tribulation, but in truth, he only held partial control. The fairy could travel between reality and the void, wandering everywhere. Thanks to the fairy, Fifth could observe a portion of the domain he had created and learn about many things inside the domain. Still, even Fifth was not the true master of the Fairy of Tribulation. According to him, the fairy always existed within the Heavenly Void Palace. He tried to refine it but had never been successful, so he was merely one among the fairy's users, just with permissions higher than Kunlun Emperor. The Fairy of Tribulation is critical. If Lin Moyu wanted to enter any other Heavenly Void Palace, the fairy would be the key. Fortunately, the fairy is now in Lin Moyu's possession. Otherwise, Fifth would have made sure it got to Lin Moyu anyway. The timing of Kunlun Emperor's return, what appeared pure coincidence, was, in truth, orchestrated by Fifth. His manipulation was so subtle even Kunlun Emperor never knew. After hearing everything about the Kunlun Emperor, Lin Moyu couldn't help but suspect that the causal ring played a role as well. The fruit he'd planted ensured every choice he made was correct. Unknowingly, that karmic fruit was pushing the development of events. Fifth then spoke about the butler, who is a being birthed by the Heavenly Void Land itself, a special entity with extremely high affinity with the Great Tao, able to hide in the Tao, manipulate all sorts of Tao, and transform endlessly through the Tao. The butler had existed for an even longer era than the fifth Heavenly Void Palace itself, but his power was limited by the laws of the Heavenly Void Land, and so he was forever stuck at half-step Chaos Realm. Leaning on this domain's Tao, the butler could demonstrate power greater than half-step Chaos, but was still not quite on the level of true Chaos. To break free, the butler plotted for many years. When the Kunlun Emperor first arrived, he wounded Little Python, then forced his way in. The butler followed Kunlun Emperor, struck the final blow to Little Python, and directly sent Little Python into Beast Abyss, beginning a cycle of reincarnation. The butler thought that without the palace guardian beast, he'd have unrestricted access. Fifth witnessed all this, and, adjusting his own plans, let things flow that way. The butler entered the fifth Heavenly Void Palace again and again, relying on the Tao to come and go and set up formations inside. He imagined his actions went unnoticed, but through the butler's own formations, Fifth was able to slip out of the fifth palace and observe the others. That's why Fifth enabled some of the butler's actions. The butler was his tool. Everyone has their own desires, their own pursuits. In the end, it's all for self-interest, each using the other, and in the end only one can come out on top. Last, Fifth talked about the other Heavenly Void Palaces. He couldn't get in. The 4 other palaces were all tightly shut, and his special place as 5th Gen Palace Master meant that, unless he forced his way in, he had no access. Lin Moyu, on the other hand, could enter. There are several ways in. One is through the main door, but that requires cracking the main gate's formation, which is different for each palace. The other is to use the Fairy of Tribulation to fly directly inside. The risk in that is whatever the palace masters may have left behind, no one knows what lies within, so a direct entry would be dangerous. How Lin Moyu chooses is up to him. Fifth gave no advice and left the decision entirely to Lin Moyu. Lin Moyu asked, "Are you certain all the other palace masters have perished?" Fifth replied quietly, "Absolutely certain. See, I am only a remnant soul now. If one day the fifth domain returns to the void, a sixth-generation heavenly void palace will appear and I will vanish completely." Lin Moyu understood. With every generation, each succeeding the last, the arrival of a new era always meant the passing of the old. The only traces remaining from previous generations are the heavenly void palaces, nothing else. No one knows when the fifth domain will return to void. Fifth can only wait and hope that a solution is found before that moment comes. Lin Moyu said, "All right, I'll try soon. I hope I can uncover the truth here and learn why all this came to be." Fifth's voice was heavy. "I leave it in your hands." Lin Moyu smiled and replied, "I'll do my best. One more question, what about the Kunlun Emperor and the butler? Can either of them achieve transcendence?" Fifth shook his head, "No chance." As he spoke, he raised a finger and two scenes appeared in the starry sky, one with the Kunlun Emperor, one with the butler. Though both had entered the first floor, they were each in entirely separate spaces, never meeting. Who knows what the two were experiencing? Both looked troubled, and Lin Moyu could sense a certain instability in their auras, as if both had been wounded. Fifth explained, "I had selfish motives while evolving the fifth domain, especially the void realm. The domain emperors inside all had innate flaws. Their limit is half-step chaos and they can never go further. If they really did move ahead, it would become their downfall. The soul devourer emperor test would destroy them. There are some things worth striving for, but others you can't force. If you insist on going beyond your destiny, you'll only experience disaster." His words sounded reasonable, but Lin Moyu was unconvinced. "I'd rather believe in self-determination than fate." Fifth said, "Heaven never blocks every path. For all things and methods there is always a sliver of hope, but you need vast luck to find that chance, and that luck is not easily obtained. For the Kunlun Emperor it's impossible. He is weighed down by too much karma. Even heaven no longer acknowledges him. His one strand of hope is already cut off." Chapter 4239, Using Each Other. Lin Moyu could naturally understand what fifth generation implied. He had previously noticed that the Kunlun Emperor carried far too much karmic baggage and that the world's fortune could never truly accept him. That single slender thread of hope that belonged to him had long since been severed. No matter how brilliant he was, there was simply no way for him to go any further. The Heavenly Void Tower would be his final stop. If he knew when to retreat, he could still go back and be an emperor, ruling as leader of the Eternals at the half-step chaos realm. Within the domain, he would still be at the top, and even in the void realm, he'd be unmatched. But if he insisted on pushing ahead, the heavenly void palace would become his grave. If he died here without someone to send him into the beast abyss, he wouldn't even get a chance at reincarnation. Back then, at least, the butler had given Little Python the finishing blow and sent it to the beast abyss. Otherwise, Little Python would have perished completely. Fifth generation finished describing what he knew about each heavenly void palace, then said in a low voice, "Now I'll draw in chaos power to help you enter initial chaotification. In this way, your strength will soar and your safety will also be better secured." Lin Moyu nodded, "Then I'll trouble you, senior." His tone was sincere, with a touch of gratitude, as if he truly trusted this fifth-generation palace master. But Lin Moyu's mind was like a clear mirror. He knew fifth generation only spoke so nicely because it benefited himself. Sending him to the other heavenly void palaces surely meant there was some plot behind it. He schemed against the Kunlun Emperor and the butler, making plans within plans, each step thought out 3 moves ahead. It was never so simple. And the wisp before Lin Moyu was only a remnant soul, but was it really just a remnant? In any case, there was no harm in accepting the benefit first. With a light tap of his finger, fifth generation made the mass of chaos swordgrass on the lawn sway, their power gathering into a single sword that slashed open the starry sky. The sky split open with a great crack, and beyond was a thick mass of chaos chi. This isn't chaos. Lin Moyu instantly recognized it. Beyond that crack was not the chaos world. He had peered through a rift in the Deadlands and felt true chaos before the difference was obvious. Fifth generation said, "When I was evolving the domain, I drew in a vast amount of chaos energy but, for selfish reasons, kept some aside. Now I can use it to help you achieve an initial chaotification." He sounded completely honest, but Lin Moyu was alert. He didn't trust, so he naturally did not believe every word fifth generation said. In Lin Moyu's eyes, 9.5 out of 10 things fifth generation said were true, but the half-lie was always at the critical core. Yet in the current situation he couldn't refuse, and since his soul gave no warning, it seemed there was no immediate danger. Fifth generation guided the chaos energy down like sweet rain upon Lin Moyu. "Refine it, if you please." Lin Moyu nodded and began. Immediately, he sensed something was off. Within the chaos energy there lurked a trace of impurity. It seemed insignificant but was stubbornly difficult to remove. At the heart of that impurity, there seemed to be a sliver of consciousness. Lin Moyu instantly realized this was the backdoor fifth generation had left, just as he did when watching the Kunlun Emperor and the Butler. If Lin Moyu refined this chaos energy, fifth generation would be able to observe or even influence him. Fortunately, Lin Moyu's soul was sharp enough to detect this. Fifth generation not only wanted him to do things but also planned to use him as a tool. Since that was the case, Lin Moyu would make sure he gained the benefit without being used. Chaos chi from the vast world surged up in silence and clashed with the chaos energy drawn forth by fifth generation. In this process, Lin Moyu did not undergo any chaotification at all. But outwardly, it looked like he was earnestly refining and absorbing it at high speed, using up a great amount of chaos energy while his body underwent no change. Fifth generation was surprised. "Taoist, why is this happening?" Lin Moyu shook his head. "I'm not sure, no matter what I try it doesn't work." "How strange," Fifth murmured. He too couldn't quite figure out what was happening. Lin Moyu mused, "Could it be because I'm still merely at the eternal level?" Fifth considered, "Perhaps that's all there is to it." Not being able to find any other reason, they accepted that explanation. Lin Moyu said, "Then don't waste any more chaos chi, senior. Even though I may not achieve chaotification with my abilities, I should still be some help to you. At this point it has to be that way, just be careful, that's all." Fifth withdrew the chaos energy, seeming to offer a kind reminder. But Lin Moyu heard a note of disappointment. Perhaps Fifth was frustrated at being unable to observe him. But then again, Fifth still had other ways, such as the Ferry of Tribulation. He had previously claimed that once the ferry went into other heavenly void palaces, he would lose his connection to it. Lin Moyu wasn't sure he fully believed this. Even the chaos swordgrass he had received was suspect using it. Could there be danger if he ever became Fifth's enemy or was no longer useful? Would the swordgrass turn on him immediately? After reclaiming the chaos chi, fifth generation opened a passageway with a wave. "Go on, whether you succeed or not, I'll remember what you've done. If anything comes up, return and we'll talk more." Lin Moyu rose, bowed slightly, and stepped into the passage to leave. Once he left, a long sigh echoed out in the starry sky, a sigh that would not fade even after millions of years, filling the entire starfield with a sense of regret. The scene shifted and Lin Moyu found himself standing before the fifth generation heavenly void palace. Little Python, the guardian beast, had its eyes wide open watching him. "Master, you're finally back, I was so worried," Little Python called out loudly. Although titled the guardian beast, in truth it was not allowed inside the heavenly void palace, it was only a figurehead. Lin Moyu nodded and with a turn of his hand stored away the chaos swordgrass. For now it naturally had its uses. So long as he was not Fifth's enemy, it was a trump card, but if he ever did turn against Fifth, the swordgrass could become a fatal threat. "Little Python, do you still want to stick around as the guardian beast?" Little Python shook its big head energetically. "I want to stay with you, master." "All right, go inside and stay put for now. Once we return, I'll let you out again." With a wave, Lin Moyu stowed Little Python away too. Truthfully, after so many cycles of reincarnation, Little Python no longer had much to do with the founding Heavenly Void Palace. Besides, anyone could become the guardian beast or no one, it didn't matter. Fifth wouldn't object to him taking Little Python along. Lin Moyu knew perfectly well he still had use to Fifth, so there be no falling out. But he also had to be ready in case one day there was a clash. He'd need a plan. Following the map the butler had given, Lin Moyu set out across the heavenly void land, taking in the sense of deep antiquity everywhere. Soon he arrived at the formation the butler had set up. Following the instructions, he activated it. He did not go in at once but took time to closely observe the formation. The butler wasn't entirely trustworthy, and Fifth had likely tinkered with this array, so who knew what lay inside. After a moment, Lin Moyu smiled faintly. Sure enough, there's something wrong here. Chapter 4240, Refining the Fairy of Tribulation. The fifth-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master had once tampered with the butler's formation, adding his own tricks completely unbeknownst to the butler. The fifth's mastery of divine runes was far beyond the butler. The two were not on the same level at all. But trying to hide such schemes from Lin Moyu was not so easy. Despite fifth generation's caution, Lin Moyu still managed to spot clues. In one rather inconspicuous spot on the teleportation array, a few broken divine runes could be found. These runes blended in perfectly with the formation. Most of the time they seemed like mere scraps, discovered only when the array was actually activated. So Lin Moyu first activated the array before searching for them. His analysis indicated that this particular rune's function was to mark the user of the teleport array a nearly invisible trace, but enough to allow fifth generation to observe anyone using it. For years, almost everything the butler did had been under fifth generation's eyes, and there had to be deeper intentions behind it all. Lin Moyu did not remove the runes left by fifth generation. As soon as he did, fifth would notice. Instead, Lin Moyu took out a blank jade slip, an empty, unmarked piece. With a touch of soul fire, he quickly refined it, turning it into a solid little array plate. He then casually drew a simple formation on the plate, and holding the jade in hand, entered the teleportation array, headed for the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace. The array rumbled to life, opening a spatial channel between the Tao, and Lin Moyu saw the world blur into rivers of light as he was transmitted. The fifth's hidden runes activated too, slipping into the flow of light and stealthily heading toward Lin Moyu. But Lin Moyu activated his own array plate, setting his formation into motion. It drew the fifth's mark into itself. Fifth generation would believe his rune had activated and attached to someone, and with no one else in the teleportation formation except Lin Moyu, he'd never suspect otherwise. When the transmission ended, Lin Moyu was standing before the grand gate of the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace. He kept the array plate attached to his waist, feigning total ignorance. Looking around, Lin Moyu examined the palace. The patterns on the gate were quite different from those in the fifth generation domain. Almost all the life forms depicted were unfamiliar to him. These were all beings from the fourth generation domain. Each generation's world contained utterly distinct creatures. Not recognizing them was only natural. From the characteristics, however, Lin Moyu could glean some information. The fifth generation domain was marked by a complete set of great Tao, giving rise to all sorts of life. The diversity was such that no type was considered absolutely superior. But the fourth generation's palace doors and walls mostly depicted fish-like creatures, and Lin Moyu felt powerful traces of water Tao and cause and effect Tao from them. So the fourth generation domain was a world evolved primarily from the great Tao of water. No, a single great Tao of water wouldn't be enough to make an entire domain. At best, it played an outsized role. Since the fifth succeeded the fourth and the fourth generation palace went silent at the moment the fifth palace appeared, there probably shouldn't be any life left inside. Lin Moyu walked up and tried to push open the grand gates. But they were tightly sealed, not budging no matter how much strength he used. To enter, he had to solve the riddle of the door, but where was the riddle, and how was it to be unraveled? There was no visible divine rune, no clear formation. Lin Moyu could not immediately see any solution. The fourth generation domain had its own rules, born from the former master's intent, a wholly different system from the fifth. If he searched slowly enough, he would surely find the answer, but that would mean wasting considerable time. He didn't want to waste so much effort. The fourth generation was already gone. Outside of its historical and Tao value, it had little to offer the present or future. Being straightforward, Lin Moyu simply produced the Fairy of Tribulation. He'd use it to crash inside. The fairy was already partially refined, so with a thought, Lin Moyu entered its space. Upon the deck, many Tao Lord-level beings, some real, some illusory, were hard at work, hailing from diverse realms. They'd already lost all sense of self, functioning only on the fairy's orders. Without consciousness, such beings were nothing but walking corpses in Lin Moyu's eyes, worse than dead. He realized now he could command these soul slaves, order them to do anything, even charge out in battle for him if needed. But that was pointless. They were only Tao lords, their power negligible in his eyes. Partial refinement of the fairy allowed him to move freely about its deck. To go deeper into the ship's interior required further refining, and at present he could not yet command its core. His soul force surged through the Fairy of Tribulation, probing for deeper control. As his soul delved, Lin Moyu mapped out the internal structure and understood the purpose of each region. The fairy was split into outer, inner, and central regions. The outer region was the deck, where the fairy could control or erase the souls of those aboard, making them slaves. Whether it could erase or enslave a target depended on the controller's own strength. When the Kunlun Emperor controlled the fairy, he'd only been a weak half-step chaos, barely above eternal level, so the fairy could overpower Tao lords and lesser beings, but struggled against great Tao lords. You can only suppress enemies one major realm below you. Honestly, that's not so useful. If you're already that much stronger, you could crush opponents yourself. Why bother with the fairy? So the true ability was not combat, but rather in erasing souls to create fairy slaves, though even this was less useful than his own army of undead servants. The fairy, after all, was not a weapon of mass destruction. Its strength lay elsewhere. The inner region was the administrator's zone, the part Lin Moyu had reached before, including the statue. With this refined, he'd be able to fully command the fairy. The center was reserved for the fairy's true master. Its function was still unclear, as he hadn't refined it yet. Lin Moyu had mastered the outer region and was refining the inner, but it was getting slower and more difficult. He soon understood. The Kunlun Emperor had only ever refined the inner region, as had fifth generation. Neither had truly become the fairy's owner, just its managers and controllers. The fairy had existed long before the fifth generation palace, indicating its creator was far more mysterious. Dozens of days later, Lin Moyu finally finished refining the inner region. He became the new manager and controller. When he attempted to refine the central region, though, his soul force was blocked. He stopped right away. The core felt dangerous, and he sensed that a forced refinement would end very badly. That's enough for now, I'll just use it as it is. With a single thought, the Fairy of Tribulation flared with dazzling light, illuminating the main gate of the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace. Chapter 42-41, The Soul Controller. The Fairy of Tribulation slowly drifted toward the main gate of the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace. It did not move quickly, and no overwhelming power seemed to be unleashed. Just as the fairy's hull was about to touch the gate, the great door suddenly opened by itself. Standing on the deck, Lin Moyu was stunned. He'd braced himself to take the impact, only to watch this scene unfold. The door wasn't broken open by force at all. The Fairy of Tribulation acted like the perfect key, and the gate opened automatically for it. The Fairy of Tribulation is the key to the Heavenly Void Palace's gate. This thought surfaced in Lin Moyu's mind. He didn't know if this notion was correct, but at that moment it felt right. If that was truly the case, then the Fairy of Tribulation's role was even greater than what the fifth generation Heavenly Void Palace Master had described. Very likely, each palace was inseparable from the fairy's connection. And that connection was hidden within the fairy's central region, a place even the fifth palace master could not touch. The fairy glided inside the fourth heavenly void palace, and Lin Moyu seemed to enter an entirely new domain, confronted by a completely different order of human Tao. Except for the immortality great Tao, all the other great Taos he'd comprehended were rendered useless here. The rules were entirely different. Lin Moyu brought the fairy to a halt and did not venture further. His expression grew somewhat cold. "In here you can't see me anymore, can you?" Within the fourth heavenly void palace, the utterly distinct rules and powers of the great Tao formed a brand new, independent domain. Lin Moyu could even sense an intense force of domain power all around. He was completely certain the wisp of soul that the fifth had left within the fairy was now completely cut off from his main body. He could no longer control it at all. Now, what Lin Moyu needed to do was fully refine the inner region of the fairy of tribulation, erase all forces that did not belong to him himself, and become the sole administrator and controller of the fairy. As for whether he could eventually become its true master, that would be a challenge for another day. His soul force surged forth, sweeping powerfully into the interior of the fairy. During the previous rounds of refinement, Lin Moyu had been very cautious. With his keen spirit, he distinctly sensed two residual soul marks left inside the fairy. These two souls each occupied a corner of the fairy. One was somewhat poorly hidden, the other extremely deeply concealed. They belonged to the Emperor and to Fifth, respectively. Neither of them had truly given up the fairy of tribulation, though the Kunlun Emperor had no idea someone else lurked there after his own attempt. Still, Lin Moyu had detected both. While refining before, he had avoided touching them, acting as if they didn't exist, and carefully stepped around them. At that time, Lin Moyu became the third controller of the fairy. If Kunlun Emperor or Fifth wanted, they could have expelled him and reclaimed the fairy whenever they wished. But now, using the environment of the fourth heavenly void palace, Lin Moyu intended to completely wipe them out, making the fairy truly his own. If successful, he would be invincible. If Fifth ever turned against him, Lin Moyu could use the fairy to protect himself. His soul force first targeted the wisp left by Kunlun Emperor. Although he could muster half-step chaos-level power with his gathering force technique, his soul itself was still just at the eternal peak, clearly weaker than the Emperor's. Fortunately, all Kunlun Emperor had left was the tiniest trace of soul. Under Lin Moyu's overwhelming spiritual attack, that trace was steadily ground down and faded away. He renewed his assault until the Emperor's last spiritual remnant was erased. "Your turn." Lin Moyu set his sights on Fifth's hidden soul remnant, which was so well hidden even Kunlun Emperor had never discovered it. This was the real hard obstacle. Fifth's cultivation was at least major accomplishment Chaos Realm, making this a very tough nut to crack. His repeated soul assaults had no effect. The soul mark stood unaffected, unflinching under pressure. A gap of one major realm could not be overcome by sheer numbers alone. Yet Lin Moyu was not worried. He had many other options at his disposal. The world-burning fire, death power, skeletal hell. Anyone could potentially wear down Fifth's remnant soul, but all would take time. Lin Moyu decided to use the most convenient and direct method. His soul condensed into form, and as he gazed at Fifth's residual spirit, the catastrophic scepter appeared in his hand. He figured that either the balance gem or the soul gem could likewise deal with this problem. Catastrophic scepter in hand, Lin Moyu felt a sense of unrivaled confidence. Once he eliminated Fifth's soul, he could truly enter the inner region and seize the fifth gemstone atop the statue, making the catastrophic scepter whole again. He was curious what the fifth gemstone's ability would be. He activated the balance gem, which radiated a faint glow enveloping Fifth's soul remnant. At the same time, masses of undead servants manifested. The balance gem could balance power and realm level. Using a massive number of undead servants as a standard, the realm of Fifth's spiritual remnant began to decrease. He started with 10,000 undead servants, but Fifth's soul only dropped a little in level. Remaining in the Chaos Realm, it didn't make much difference, likely because the undead he'd summoned were far weaker. This was testament to how enormous the gap between Chaos Realm and Great Tao Lord was, and even the balance gem's effect was greatly diminished here. Lin Moyu summoned more undead, ramping up from 10,000 to 100 million, a 10,000-fold leap. While the balance gems effect was greatly reduced against Chaos Realm remnants, Fifth Soul was at least just a wisp of consciousness lingering here. As Lin Moyu kept grinding away, Fifth Soul finally dropped below Chaos Realm to his own level. Now it got easier. Lin Moyu kept up the grind, slowly reducing Fifth Soul with his own. With no foundation or source of strength, Fifth Spirit Remnant couldn't withstand Lin Moyu's relentless attacks and was finally erased completely. Lin Moyu heard a faint hum from the Ferry of Tribulation. Suddenly, his connection to the vessel grew much stronger. The mysterious and important region once occupied by Fifth Soul was now his. Lin Moyu had finally become the sole controller of the Ferry of Tribulation. Unless its true master appeared personally, no one could wrest it from him. Now, in times of danger, he could hide inside the ferry and avoid disaster. Even when seeking transcendence, he could take the ferry and break through the Soul Devourer's blockade, charging straight into chaos itself. Ferry catastrophe or salvation, this was its greatest value. Upon realizing its true use, Lin Moyu felt a pang of regret on the Kunlun Emperor's behalf. Had the Emperor figured this out, he could have used the ferry to break free to chaos, but he'd never realized, and Fifth wouldn't have permitted it either. With a thought, Lin Moyu appeared within the ferry's inner realm, finding himself once more in the large plaza staring at the enormous statue. This towering statue, 1,000 meters tall and crafted from primeval origin treasure materials, radiated an intense and mysterious aura. Last time when Lin Moyu tried to view the statue's face, the Kunlun Emperor had stopped him. This time, no one could stand in his way. With a single thought, Lin Moyu flashed to the statue's base. When he looked up, he frowned. The statue had no face at all. Does it have no face, or am I simply not qualified to see its true form? He wondered silently. At that moment, the fifth gemstone rose gently from the statue's crown. Gemstone. Lin Moyu's heart leapt in joy, but before he could do anything, a single eye appeared suddenly on the faceless statue. A divine light shot down, freezing Lin Moyu instantly in place, unable to move at all. Chapter 42-42, The Calamity Supreme. Countless visions surged before Lin Moyu's eyes. He witnessed a magnificent figure, traversing all kinds of domains, slaying innumerable powerful beings, fighting his way through chaos, destroying strange and fantastic lifeforms no one had ever seen. Vast domains collapsed before him as easily as a mound of eggs crushed in the palm of a hand. His weapon was precisely the Catastrophic Scepter. The scepter's 5 gemstones gleamed brilliantly wherever their light swept. All things were annihilated. All these scenes were fleeting fragments, and Lin Moyu could only glimpse the figure's back, never his true face. That figure fought through all of chaos, reaching its very end, until finally in the last instant his body exploded and turned to ashes. The Catastrophic Scepter vanished, the 5 gemstones scattered. With the end of the divine radiance, Lin Moyu shook himself awake. So these are his experiences. The mighty figure in the visions was the person represented by the statue before him. With such astonishing power, how could he have ended up utterly destroyed, even his bones gone? What exactly happened? Why would a treasure as mighty as the Catastrophic Scepter be shattered? What kind of existence could defeat him? Thoughts spun rapidly in his mind. Just then, the 5th gemstone atop the statue turned into a stream of light, whistling straight into the depths of the Ferry of Tribulation. Lin Moyu didn't even have time to stop it. The 5th gemstone flew into the ferry's core, a place Lin Moyu still could not reach. This statue, the 5th gemstone, none were under the control of the Kunlun Emperor. Yet back then, why did the Kunlun Emperor claim that if Lin Moyu found the 4th gemstone, he would hand over the 5th? Lin Moyu gazed at the palace in front of the statue. Back then, it seemed the Kunlun Emperor had spoken to him from within this palace. This palace was called the Central Hall, reserved for the controller of the Ferry of Tribulation. If he wished to enter the core region, Lin Moyu had to pass through the Central Hall. Maybe the answer in there. With a step, Lin Moyu appeared at the entrance and strode inside. The hall was empty, with only a single ornate throne in the center, nothing else. Lin Moyu glanced around. The hall was filled with divine runes, all dormant. If activated, they would form an extremely complex array. In the heart of this array was that central throne. This throne was prepared for the controller. By sitting there, one could operate the ferry of tribulation. Lin Moyu sat down and poured his soul force into the throne. Instantly, he felt as if he and the ferry were fused into one. Aside from the core region, everything else inside the ferry appeared instantly before his mind's eye. He could see and control it all with a single thought. The grand array of the hall activated. Divine runes lit up one after another, and at the same time a deep voice echoed in the hall. I am the Calamity Supreme, Master of the Ferry of Tribulation. If you would inherit my mantle, you must find the Catastrophic Scepter and gather the Soul, Elemental, Balance, and Domain gemstones, then the final gemstone may be gained. Reach the Chaos Realm and enter the core hall of the Supreme, and you will receive my legacy. Upon hearing this and recalling what he'd seen before, together with the Kunlun Emperor's words so many years ago, Lin Moyu pieced together the truth. The ferry's true owner was the Calamity Supreme, a being like the green-robed and white-robed elders, a supreme disaster of heaven and earth, and the statue was of him. The Catastrophic Scepter was his weapon. It had 5 gemstones. Whoever obtained the scepter, collecting the 4 main stones and then reached Chaos Realm, would have a chance to inherit his mantle and truly become his successor. The Kunlun Emperor had clearly figured this out, but had limitations. He couldn't leave the ferry. Back then, the Kunlun Emperor saw that Lin Moyu had obtained the scepter and already collected 3 stones, so he plotted to have Lin Moyu finish finding the gemstones and then take them for himself. That was the purpose behind his words to Lin Moyu. He'd planned to strike when Lin Moyu gathered all 4. If Lin Moyu entered the ferry, the Kunlun Emperor would seize the opportunity. But fate took an unexpected turn. In just a short span, Lin Moyu had advanced from Tao Lord to eternal existence, able to battle across realms, no weaker than the Emperor, and it was nearly impossible for the Emperor to snatch the scepter away now. Perhaps realizing the Catastrophic Scepter was beyond his destiny, the Kunlun Emperor gave up on it and resolved to use the Heavenly Void Tower to transcend. To chase after transcendence, he was willing to give up even the ferry, wagering everything for one last chance. But ultimately, with flaws in the world and himself, a domain emperor was always fated to fail at transcendence. His sole chance was lost because he lacked a true grasp of cause and effect. His own path was cut off. In truth, all those years of plotting by the Kunlun Emperor were doomed from the start. He may have excelled at cultivation but was lacking in other ways. Going too far always brings a price. Now, with the 5th gemstone gone to the core, Lin Moyu could not collect it or restore the Catastrophic Scepter until he reached Chaos Realm. Still, he'd gained something from this trip. He now knew the Calamity Supreme existed, knew who had been the previous wielder of the scepter, and now understood how to obtain the 5th gemstone. His matters in the ferry concluded, Lin Moyu prepared to explore the 4th Heavenly Void Palace. But before that, there was still one more thing he needed to do. To guard against 5th Palace Master turning on him, Lin Moyu had to take precautions. He took out the causal ring and infused it with soul force, activating it. A fruit without a cause. He immediately planted a karmic fruit. His first and only requirement was a safe return from the 4th Heavenly Void Palace. He didn't demand any harvest. If there really was nothing in the palace, that would be too much to ask for, and might drain his talent for rebirth even if he died 20 times. If his only goal was to get back safely, and with the ferry in hand, the challenge should not be too hard. Sure enough, the backlash from the causal ring killed him just 5 times before it was satisfied, so the result was not difficult. After a few dozen breaths' time, Lin Moyu planted a second fruit, this time requesting safe departure from the Heavenly Void Land. The backlash this time was fierce. Lin Moyu died 18 times to balance it, nearly exceeding the limits of his rebirth talent. Dying 18 times meant the challenge was dangerous indeed. Danger awaited him out there in the Heavenly Void Land. But with the karma planted, fate would make sure he survived. Lin Moyu guessed what that danger would be. Very likely from 5th, If the earlier palace masters are truly dead, then he's the only threat left. He was already preparing for the possibility of a falling out with Fifth. Having finished setting his two fruits, Lin Moyu finally relaxed and began inspecting the fourth heavenly void palace. He did not leave the ferry for a vessel forged by the Calamity Supreme to survive from ancient times. Its security was as good as it gets. If not for the restrictions on the Kunlun Emperor and Fifth, he could never have gotten such a treasure. The formation shimmered and the hall became translucent, giving Lin Moyu a crystal-clear view of everything outside. Seated in the innermost hall, Lin Moyu could easily see all that lay within the fourth heavenly void palace. The ferry was floating atop a vast ocean, waves surged all around, and from a distant coastline pillars of fire shot into the sky. Flames and the sea blended together, creating a brilliant spectacle. Lin Moyu immediately steered the ferry toward it, eager to see what it was. Chapter 42-43, Another Slumbering Coffin. The ferry of tribulation flew across the ocean and came to a land of red flames. Rivers of magma flowed and there were many volcanoes, erupting constantly. Fiery eruptions spewed out countless rocks, stone rain falling from the skies. Water and fire are supposed to be incompatible, but between these two regions was a faint golden light which kept the two sides separated. The gold light was not strong, yet neither side could cross it. Seeing this, Lin Moyu overturned his previous assumptions. The inside and outside of the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace were like two worlds. From the outside you couldn't see in, while inside was a shattered five-element world. Gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Here, four had already appeared: the ocean for water, the flaming magma for fire, the giant stones from the eruptions for earth, and the golden light as metal. There should also be a region representing wood. At this moment, the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace had become a ruin. Lin Moyu believed the palace had once been different. After the fourth generation domain returned to the void and the fifth generation domain appeared, everything belonging to the fourth generation had to be buried. Hence, the palace ended up like this. Lin Moyu continued piloting the ferry through the sky. With a deafening boom, a waterspout transformed into a massive dragon and surged towards the ferry. That watery dragon held a power comparable to a half-step Chaos Realm strike. Yet the ferry did not budge under such an attack. It blocked it easily. Even a true Chaos Realm being might not shake the ferry, so this half-step power was nothing at all. The assault from the Water Dao had opened the battle, and immediately gold, fire, and earth Dao powers unleashed wave after wave of attacks, bombarding the foreign ferry of tribulation. Endless attacks crashed upon the ferry, but it remained unshaken and entirely unaffected. Even the Dao Lord boat slaves on the deck continued working as normal. None were injured. The ferry pressed on, weathering the assault, flying through the Heavenly Void Palace until Lin Moyu spotted a swath of green. Here a palace appeared and disappeared amidst the verdant hues. Every Heavenly Void Palace had a central grand hall, a core of the whole palace. The fifth generation had the 9-story treasure tower at its center. Lin Moyu was curious what would anchor the fourth generation's core. The palace was now a ruin, so the surviving central hall must be extraordinary. The ferry quickly drew near, leaving behind water, fire, gold, and earth, and entered a domain of the wood and cause and effect Dao. In an instant, all the attacks vanished. Lin Moyu sensed the aura of the wood Dao. Although he could not comprehend the wood Dao in this place, he could still recognize its unique character. It seems the fourth generation palace master favored the Dao of trapping. From the palace remains, Lin Moyu deduced the master's preferences. The central section was dominated completely by the wood Dao. The wood Dao had manifested a green earth, delivering a hint of vitality to the ruined palace. Within the green expanse, the shattered central hall appeared in sight. The central hall had fallen into ruin. 5 small ponds encircled it, each containing the power of one of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, earth. At the heart of the ruined grand hall sat a coffin. The moment he spotted the coffin, Lin Moyu blurted out, "A slumbering coffin." He would not be mistaken, this was indeed a slumbering coffin. He had obtained such an item before and had personally crafted one himself. there was no way he could mistake it. The slumbering coffin he once acquired in the mysterious manner was still lying in the corner of his storage space. He never expected to see yet another slumbering coffin here. Two domains with different DAOs, yet the slumbering coffin was usable in both. This was very odd. The fairy eased down to the side of the slumbering coffin, and Lin Moyu sent out a strand of soul to leave the fairy and examine it. There were minor differences, but Lin Moyu was certain this truly was a slumbering coffin, and after being sealed shut, it had never been opened again. To be left in the central hall of the fourth Gen Heavenly Void Palace, there was no doubt who lay inside. The fourth palace master buried himself in it, clearly unwilling to perish and wishing to escape oblivion in slumber. But sadly, the slumbering coffin cannot be opened from the inside. Since no one could enter after the fourth palace, the master could only sleep forever if nothing unexpected happened. And even then, entering the coffin didn't guarantee survival. The slumbering coffin was not limitless, it had its own boundaries. Once those boundaries were exceeded, the being inside would also die. But before the coffin was opened, no one could know the state within. At this thought, Lin Moyu realized there was an exception, Heavenly Supreme. Back then, the green-robed elder had silently entered his soul world, opened the slumbering coffin, and taken away his wife. Thinking of this, Lin Moyu ground his teeth in anger. This old score would someday be settled. He did not open the slumbering coffin but stowed it away instead. Even if it needed to be opened, it wouldn't be here. This was after all the domain of the fourth palace master. If he was somehow alive and turned hostile, opening the coffin on someone else's turf was asking for trouble. If there was to be an opening, it would be somewhere safe, like in the vast world or inside the fairy. With the coffin retrieved, the ruined grand hall collapsed and the verdant earth burst into dazzling green light. Endless vitality swept forth in a wild gale. Vitality was usually a good thing, but in excess it became deadly poison here. The wood Dao's vitality transformed into a lethal toxin, flooding the fairy. The wood Dao could poison even a great Dao lord, but for the fairy of tribulation this was nothing. Lin Moyu carefully piloted the fairy at a steady pace and left. With the slumbering coffin taken, the fourth palace was now completely collapsed. Though the palace itself physically existed, its soul and core were gone. What was left was merely a relic of the fourth generation domain, now devoid of all value. The fairy flew out of the fourth palace, soaring high in the sky, not returning to the butler's teleportation formation, but instead heading directly for the third generation Heavenly Void Palace. Previously, when passing through the teleportation array, the mark 5th had left on him was captured by Lin Moyu's own array plate. Once the array plate entered the fourth palace, the link was broken. Lin Moyu put the plate into his storage space, severing it for good. The soul remnants in the fairy had also been wiped out by Lin Moyu. 5th had no further means of monitoring him. At this moment, 5th would still believe Lin Moyu to be inside the fourth palace. So Lin Moyu no longer used the teleport array. Instead, he piloted the fairy across the Heavenly Void Land directly. The previously silent Heavenly Void Land now came alive. Numerous Dao-formed living beings attacked the fairy, trying to stop the intruding outsider. Yet most were only Dao lords, with a few mighty ones reaching eternal realm, but they were nothing to the fairy, barely more than drizzle, not even enough to scratch it. Flying straight through the Heavenly Void Land, Lin Moyu reached the third generation Heavenly Void Palace, and without pause crashed the fairy straight into the gates. The tightly shut doors responded and swung open as the fairy plowed inside. Boom! Lightning flashed and thunder roared, violet gold bolts hammering the fairy and causing it to lurch and shake. The boat slaves on the deck were knocked head over heels, sprawling everywhere. Lin Moyu frowned. The defenses of the third palace were actually able to rock the fairy. The explosions went on unending, space consuming itself in a cascade of collapse as still greater forces were released. Lin Moyu guided the fairy out of the conflagration, only stopping once he'd cleared the palace. He looked back at the endlessly exploding ruins with lingering fear. Things were worse than he'd thought. Without the fairy, even his rebirth talent wouldn't have saved him. Each explosion came close to true chaos level and could have killed him for good. Fortunately, with the fairy he'd escaped in one piece. He glanced at the black and white round stone in his hand. Its surface was smooth, filled inside with yin and yang, not innate treasure but even more wondrous than innate treasures. After a bit of study, he couldn't guess its use and simply stashed it away for now. The Fairy of Tribulation left the third palace, heading for its next destination. Explosions still rocked the remains of the third palace. Their shockwaves sent all the domain's living creatures into fits of terror, so Lin Moyu found his path peaceful for a change. Very soon he arrived before the main gate of the second-generation Heavenly Void Palace. Lin Moyu frowned. This gate, why is it like this? Chapter 42-45, The Message. The second-generation Heavenly Void Palace, as Lin Moyu understood, represented the Tao giving birth to the One, which in turn evolves into Yin and Yang. The One in reality should be chaos. This was only his guess before, but standing before the gates of the second-generation Heavenly Void Palace, Lin Moyu discovered he was correct. The doors were tightly shut. In front of them, a vortex slowly spun, filled with mist interwoven of all kinds of forces just like chaos. After observing for a while, Lin Moyu confirmed that the vortex was not truly chaos, but a force similar to chaos. Chaos chi is the foundation of a domain, but you can't use primordial chaos directly to create a domain, so this isn't actual chaos. The second-generation Palace Master must have tried to imitate chaos to evolve the domain, forsaking the clearer Great Tao. But that means the entire domain remained in a hazy state. For its life forms, cultivating would be incredibly hard, never mind achieving the highest realms. Even getting started would be difficult. The advantage is, if you do succeed in cultivation, you'd become extremely powerful, and it would be much easier to undergo chaotification and transcend in the future. Just standing before the gates and looking at the vortex, Lin Moyu understood how the second Palace Master constructed his domain. To be able to construct a domain in this way, this alone proved the second-generation Palace Master's formidable strength, far above any who came after. With each passing generation, the power of each domain seemed to wane. The Fairy of Tribulation drifted over. As soon as it touched the vortex, the grand doors rumbled open. No, the fairy was being welcomed in. As the controller of the fairy, Lin Moyu sensed that the Fairy of Tribulation was indeed being invited inside. This suggested the fairy had been here before, maybe spent a long period in this palace. Within the second Heavenly Void Palace, thick mists pervaded everything, resembling chaos chi yet capable of evolving endless Taos. The mists were even more powerful than thunderclouds. If they erupted, Lin Moyu had no doubt he would be instantly slain inside. No amount of undead servants would help. No matter how many he summoned, they'd be annihilated just as quickly and endlessly. For any being below Chaos Realm, this was a forbidden land. The very first thing Lin Moyu did was use the causal ring to plant a karmic fruit, ensuring he could return safely. To his surprise, the backlash from the causal ring cost him only a single death, meaning this place was extremely safe for him. That safety came from the Fairy of Tribulation. The fairy journeyed through the mists, searching for a path. Fortunately, the second-generation palace wasn't very large, and Lin Moyu soon found the central hall. The central hall was mostly intact, a force inside supporting its structure. The fairy entered the hall when suddenly a voice sounded. "You have arrived." The voice pierced the fairy and rang directly in Lin Moyu's ears, startling him. There was someone still here. Could it be a lingering soul like the 5th-gen Palace Master? Lin Moyu found this hard to believe. The second palace should have been long destroyed. How could any being survive? The voice continued, "I have already perished. What remains here is neither a soul nor a consciousness, but only a message I left behind. There is no need for surprise. Only the Fairy of Tribulation can come here. Even the Heavenly Supreme cannot. Even a Heavenly Supreme can't enter." That was a bold claim. Lin Moyu was a bit skeptical. The voice went on, "If a Heavenly Supreme were to enter, this hall would instantly collapse and nothing would remain." Now Lin Moyu understood it was a matter of structural rules within the palace. No wonder the Fairy of Tribulation was welcomed, in everything depended on the intentions of the second-generation palace master. He continued, I don't know your name, but I can guess who you are. Many answers you'll have to find for yourself, but I also have something I need to entrust to you. At the bottom of this hall I have left something behind. Take it to the first-generation Heavenly Void Palace, perhaps there you'll find what you seek. With that, the message ended. Lin Moyu took a deep breath and steered the fairy down to the bottom of the hall. But just a few seconds later, the same voice sounded again. You have arrived. I have already perished. What remains here is neither a soul nor a consciousness, but only a message I left behind. There is no need for surprise, only the Fairy of Tribulation can enter here. Even the Heavenly Supreme cannot. The exact same disclaimer repeating itself. Lin Moyu couldn't help but smile wryly. So it could be set up like this? Honestly, this was much simpler and more reliable than leaving behind 10 different lingering soul fragments. The Fairy of Tribulation came to a gentle halt at the base of the hall, where Lin Moyu saw what the second-generation palace master had left. It was an ancestral plaque inscribed with just 2 characters at the base, honor seat. Whatever else was written had been erased. There was no way to know whose tablet it actually was. At the foot of the hall there was no chaotic mist. That was clearly the palace master's doing, ensuring Lin Moyu could safely collect the plaque. Lin Moyu sent a projection out from the fairy to get it. The moment the plaque was removed, the repeating voice ceased. Its mission was now over, regardless of whether the person who took the plaque was actually the right one. For the second palace master, this chapter was now closed. And for Lin Moyu, this particular mystery was drawing to its end. He piloted the Fairy of Tribulation out from the mists and set course for the first-generation Heavenly Void Palace. The first palace, as the origin point of all the Heavenly Void land, ought to be the strongest out of the 5. Lin Moyu had no idea what secrets waited inside. The first-generation Heavenly Void Palace stood deep within the Heavenly Void land, and the closer Lin Moyu got, the quieter his surroundings became. In all directions for tens of thousands of li centered on the palace, there was not a single living thing, not even a blade of grass. All was barren. A constant wind blew, and when it struck the ferry, the vessel rang with an endless rumble and vibration. That wind was chaos wind. Any uncodified lifeform would be shredded in an instant. Even Lin Moyu himself couldn't last 2 seconds in that wind before being wholly destroyed. Wherever the chaos wind went, nothing lived, so how could even a trace of life remain in this place? Lin Moyu understood that, if not for the fairy, he would never have been able to reach the first palace. At least on this point, the 5th-generation master had told the truth. The Fairy of Tribulation was essential here. Finally, a grand palace came into view. Unlike the earlier palaces, the first-gen Heavenly Void Palace was a true palace, tens of thousands of meters high and wide, overwhelmingly magnificent. Pure chaos chi gushed from its heart, transforming into the chaos wind that swept far into the distance. It appeared utterly intact. The collapse of domains seemed to have had no effect on it. Lin Moyu had an odd feeling. Why does the first Heavenly Void Palace look more like a sacrificial hall? He considered the plaque he'd just received. Perhaps this was truly its intended use, a vessel for sacrifice. Guiding the fairy closer, Lin Moyu took out the causal ring to ensure he could leave the palace safely if need be. Boom! A violent backlash from the causal ring tore his body to shreds. Chapter 42-46, The Heavenly Void Sun. Purple light constantly shone on the Fairy of Tribulation. Lin Moyu died and revived again and again, an excruciating yet familiar pain. 16 times in a row the backlash finally ceased and Lin Moyu felt lingering dread. So it really is dangerous. Although he had died 16 times, Lin Moyu was unfazed. He was already used to it and didn't consider it anything remarkable. As life and death alternated, the karmic fruit was already planted. That meant all future dangers would turn into nothing and might even produce unexpected advantages. After seeding the fruit, he guided the Fairy of Tribulation into the Heavenly Void Palace. Chaos Chi crashed down on the ferry, producing the clang of metal on metal and drastically slowing the ferry's speed. Lin Moyu willed the vessel forward, radiance flashing on both ferry and staff, inching his way through the Chaos Chi. The ferry vanished into the chaos, moving forward through swirling mists. He could not see anything, everything was shrouded in mist. Lin Moyu felt as if he had entered the very depths of chaos itself. The second-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master had only simulated chaos, but here this was real chaos. Lin Moyu even wondered if he had actually left the domain and entered actual chaos for real. Of course, this was just an illusion. The truth was, the first-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master had drawn in vast amounts of chaos chi and left it here, enveloping the whole palace. He could not leave now. Stepping out of the ferry of tribulation meant instant death with no hope for rebirth. After all, in real chaos, even if you revived, you would immediately die again. Once you exhausted your rebirths, it would be true annihilation. To survive chaos, at the very least you needed initial chaotification, your body and soul surface transformed by chaos, then you could live within chaos chi. The ferry went deeper and deeper. Lin Moyu still could not see, chaos chi blocking both eyes and senses, so he was forced to move blindly. In this chaos, the concepts of time and space were lost. Thankfully, the vast world could still provide Lin Moyu with the exact passage of time, but for space, there was no help. After nearly 100 days, Lin Moyu had no idea how far he'd traveled, until finally the ferry crashed into something, bouncing violently off and altering course. What the ferry struck was extremely hard. Lin Moyu felt an intense recoil push the ferry away, while the object itself wasn't harmed in the slightest. Given the Ferry of Tribulation's toughness, able to plow through the walls of the Heavenly Void Palace, the strength of the obstacle was obvious. After coming to a halt, a light suddenly flashed, banishing the nearby chaos mist. Lin Moyu could finally see what he'd hit. It was a statue, a huge one, nearly a kilometer tall. Looking at its form, it bore some resemblance to the statue of the Calamity Supreme in the Ferry of Tribulation, but only just. Is this statue imitating the Calamity Supreme? Lin Moyu instinctively sensed this was indeed a mimicry. In the dim, the statue's features suddenly moved, as though it came to life. Those previously wooden eyes turned sharp and piercing, fixing on the ferry. You have arrived. Lin Moyu frowned slightly. Another similar script across so many generations, the masters of the Heavenly Void Palace all seemed to be waiting for him. They never explicitly stated it, but over so many years he was the only one to ever face them. If not him, who else could they have been waiting for? Suddenly inspired, Lin Moyu took out the ancestral plaque given to him by the second-generation palace master and sent it out from the ferry. The plaque shone with light and swiftly enlarged, floating before the statue. Where before it had been blank, now 4 large characters appeared: Heavenly Void Master. Together it amounted to, Honor Seat of the Heavenly Void Master. Lin Moyu was shocked. So the first-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master is the Heavenly Void Son. Just as this thought arose, the statue spoke again. There are other items, please give them to me as well, fellow Taoist. Lin Moyu realized what was wanted. He immediately took out both the slumbering coffin and the black and white orb and offered them. The black and white orb slowly floated up, affixed itself atop the statue's head and burrowed into its brow, becoming its third eye. The slumbering coffin slowly sank, positioning itself at the statue's feet. Watching this, Lin Moyu felt there was still something missing. The statue then spoke again. Fellow Taoist, you also have another slumbering coffin, please hand it over as well. Only then did Lin Moyu remember. A long time ago in that mysterious garden he had obtained a slumbering coffin. Back then, with his meager strength and the relative weakness of the beings in the garden, once he left the great world he hadn't thought about it much. That slumbering coffin had always been lying in his storage space, untouched and unexamined. Rummaging through his storage, Lin Moyu found the coffin and sent it out from the ferry. It too landed by the statue's feet, so that now there were 2 slumbering coffins, one on either side. The statue's radiance grew even brighter. driving back the chaos chi and revealing a far broader space. Beams of black and white shot out from the orb between the statue's brows, shining onto the two coffins, causing them to slowly open and release ancient auras. Misty vapors rose from the coffins, obscuring Lin Moyu's vision, but he could sense something leaving the coffins and entering the statue. The statue's expression grew ever more lifelike. A moment later, a middle-aged man in black and white robes stepped out from the light, made a slow bow to the fairy and said, "I invite fellow Taoists to come forward for a meeting." Now that the chaos chi had dispersed, Lin Moyu sent only a projection out of the fairy of tribulation. He was on his guard without knowing the other's intentions. He'd keep his true body safe within the fairy. The middle-aged man in black and white regarded Lin Moyu with a subtle smile, nodding slightly. Lin Moyu noticed a deeper, more complex meaning in his gaze but couldn't decipher it. After a moment of silence, the man bowed and said, "Heavenly Void Sun greets fellow Taoist. May I ask your name?" Lin Moyu returned the greeting at once. "Junior Lin Moyu greets Senior." Heavenly Void Sun laughed gently. "You and I are both seekers of the Tao. There's no need for excessive formality, fellow Taoist." This made Lin Moyu feel all the more uneasy. It really did seem as though this person regarded him as a peer. Even the fifth-generation palace master, whose words were polite, revealed occasional traces of superiority, a gap created by the disparity in power and impossible to fully conceal. Ordinary people wouldn't sense such a thing, but Lin Moyu could feel it keenly. Yet with Heavenly Void Sun, a single sentence radiated authentic sincerity, very odd indeed. Since this was so, Lin Moyu dispensed with excessive courtesy. "Taoist, you asked for me to come forth. Is there something you would say?" Heavenly Void Sun smiled again. "I'd like to invite you to see a play." "A play?" Lin Moyu was puzzled. Heavenly Void Sun lifted a hand and pointed into the void. Chaos chi rolled forth and scene after scene appeared like a grand drama, slowly unfurling before Lin Moyu. Instantly, Lin Moyu's consciousness was swept away. He became wholly submerged in the experience, as if a participant, not merely a spectator. The play began in chaos, its lead role, Heavenly Void Sun, standing before a domain world. With a single finger, Heavenly Void Sun intoned, "Return to the void." The domain world instantly collapsed. Chapter 42-47, Evolving the Domain. A vast domain world greater even than the fifth-generation domain, in Lin Moyu's view shattered with a single word from Heavenly Void Sun. Countless worlds and living beings were reduced to ash in an instant. Chaos was blasted open, a huge hole torn into it. An ocean of chaotic chi was first blown apart, then swirled back in, pouring into the domain. Immediately afterward, a new world began to unfold. This world wasn't large, but it was suffused with chaotic chi, giving it a primordial, ancient feel. "With the blood of living beings, the world's origin, and my own soul, I forged the heavenly void." Accompanied by this deep, chant-like intonation, Heavenly Void Sun shattered himself, offering his body to this nascent world in the process of evolution. Lin Moyu watched as if witnessing it firsthand, utterly shaken within. Heavenly Void Sun willingly destroyed his own domain, sacrificed himself, only to forge the heavenly void land. What truly was the point of the heavenly void, that it was worth such an enormous price? It was clear to Lin Moyu, the domain that Heavenly Void Sun destroyed was his own. If he was not a heavenly supreme, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, then at least he had reached perfection, Chinese letter, in the chaos realm. There were 4 stages of chaos realm. Initial chaos, when body and soul are chaotified only on the surface. Minor accomplishment chaos, body and soul fully chaotified, and one can start to manipulate chaotic chi with their own Tao. Major accomplishment chaos, one's Tao merges with chaos. Whenever they wield their Tao, torrents of chaos respond and their power soars dramatically. Perfection, the final stage, requiring not only strength but also possession of one's own domain. Only by refining chaos chi with the power of a domain, then merging refined chaos back into oneself, could one fuse their Tao with chaos itself. At that level, one didn't merely borrow from chaos, but began to truly control it. Only with perfection could someone take the next step, becoming a heavenly supreme. In Lin Moyu's eyes, Heavenly Void Sun was perfection, a top-tier powerhouse, only a half-step below the Supremes. If he'd gone further, he could have become a Supreme. Instead, he destroyed his own domain, sacrificing every world and living being inside, and merged his soul to create the Heavenly Void Land. Why? What could possibly justify this? Lin Moyu pressed himself for an answer. No matter how he turned it over in his mind, he couldn't fathom it. Not even becoming a supreme seemed worth such an exorbitant cost. The risk, giving up everything, was too great. The vision shifted. Lin Moyu now witnessed the aftermath, the Heavenly Void Land freshly formed, not even the Heavenly Void Palace existing yet. All around was endless chaos chi. It pervaded everything, making it impossible for normal life to exist, save perhaps for chaos-born beings. Now, Heavenly Void Sun appeared in this place, his soul fused with the Heavenly Void Land, allowing him to freely shape and evolve everything within. With my decree, scatter. With a word of power, the chaotic chi exploded outward, clearing a space of sky and earth. With another gesture he proclaimed, Heavenly Void Palace, arise. A booming shook the land, the Heavenly Void Land quaking as a great palace rose from the ground, the first-generation Heavenly Void Palace. The palace inhaled and exhaled chaos chi. Out of the chaos strode a giant, the physical form of Heavenly Void Sun. Though not at perfection in flesh, even his physical body was enough to shake heaven and earth. With every step he parted the infinite chaos, the chaos chi yielded to his correct, upright Tao. His physical body entered the first-generation palace, and Lin Moyu's vision followed him inside. The palace was empty, boundless chaos filling every inch. The Heavenly Void Land in its formation had drawn in an unimaginable amount of chaos chi. Heavenly Void Sun's body raised a hand, and from his fingertips countless divine runes flew, merging into the chaos. As the palace devoured the chaos, these runes spread through the entire Heavenly Void Land. The once chaotic land gradually developed order. The creator and lawgiver was Heavenly Void Sun. Once order stabilized, he gathered and compressed even more chaos chi, countless torrents drawn together, molded by his control into 10 seeds. Each seed throbbed with unfathomable power. Lin Moyu sensed that, unleashed in the 5th-generation domain, a single seed could obliterate the entire region. Boom! With a thunderous explosion, the seed detonated, rocking not only the palace but the entire Heavenly Void Land. Lin Moyu watched in awe. A domain world was being created out of destruction. Heavenly Void Sun threw the seed beyond the Heavenly Void Land, continuing to shape its evolution with his own strength. The domain developed rapidly. Many worlds formed, teeming with aquatic life. During this process, Lin Moyu felt a miraculous force at work, a power filled with thriving vitality, a force he had never encountered before. He was thunderstruck, yet he held his questions. The drama was not yet finished. The new domain filled with life as creatures survived the primordial wilds, some gaining greater and greater wisdom and starting to cultivate. There were even some natural prodigies able to absorb and expel Tao energy, born innately strong. Yet chaotic chi permeated everything, the great Taos hidden away. For those seeking cultivation, the path was unbearably hard. But whoever succeeded at cultivation in such a place would be terrifyingly powerful. Ages whisked by, Lin Moyu watched legendary beings erupt from the world, some even breaking free of the domain and achieving transcendence, entering chaos. His eyes narrowed. He saw 2 figures, hiding in the chaos yet visible. One wore green robes, the other white. All those who transcended from the world were taken away by these 2, none left behind. What are they doing? Lin Moyu was sure he wasn't mistaken. The green-robed old man and white-robed old man took all the transcenders from the first-generation domain with them. There had to be a reason. As the transcenders multiplied, the domain weakened. Lin Moyu realized, a domain's power is finite. Each time someone transcends, that power is diminished. If too many transcend, the domain's power drains away, and future transcendence becomes more difficult, even impossible. After a very long time, a sigh sounded. It is not this generation. The voice was Heavenly Void Sun's. With his words, the first domain began to crumble, wither, and was finally distilled into a single seed. Perhaps because of all it had endured, the seed was no longer what it once was. Suddenly, the vision snapped back to the first generation palace. Lin Moyu saw that Heavenly Void Sun's flesh was weak, drastically reduced from his former strength. He'd spent nearly everything in the act of giving birth to a domain. With a flick of his finger, the domain seed flew forth and he spoke softly, "The next generation then." As he spoke, his body turned into a statue, a wisp of soul flying off with the domain seed heading into the distance. Lin Moyu's vision pursued the seed, which landed in an unknown place. With a thunderclap, the second generation Heavenly Void Palace appeared. Chapter 42-48, One Generation After Another. The first generation domain collapsed and shattered, its domain seed transforming into the second generation Heavenly Void Palace. Heavenly Void Sun's body became a statue, all of his power drawn in as if he had fallen into a deep slumber. Yet a thread of his will followed the domain seed onward, not dissipating. The second generation Heavenly Void Palace appeared. The palace master was born and began to cultivate and evolve within, burdened with a great mission. From the moment of his birth, he already possessed great Tao Chaos Realm strength. But he too was limited, unable to take a single step outside the Heavenly Void Palace. Inside the palace, he completed his mission, continuing the work of evolving the domain. But the cornerstone for evolving the domain was always the domain seed created by Heavenly Void Sun. Only in this second cycle of evolution, the chaotic chi was no longer as rich as before. The second generation palace master could only imitate. His version of chaos was far weaker than the real thing. Under his management, a second generation domain gradually took shape. As it evolved, the palace master weakened. Once the formation was complete, the second generation palace master perished. The Heavenly Void Suns will emerged from the fatting force, turning into a plaque. At first, the plaque bore the words for the seat of the Heavenly Void Master. This plaque was not a memorial tablet for the dead, but the solidified will of Heavenly Void Sun, a part of his soul. Yet like the second gen palace master, it too could not leave nor return home. The second generation domain, though only an imitation of chaos chi, was still incomparably powerful and gave rise to several transcenders. Without exception, all these transcenders were taken away by the green-robed and white-robed elders. Until the domain weakened, a sigh came from the plaque, "The next generation then." The voice was laden with helplessness. He had hoped for something, but it never came to pass. With those words, the second generation domain collapsed. The domain seed reappeared. Clearly weakened, no longer as powerful as before, the seed flew away from the Heavenly Palace, heading toward distant lands. At this point, a black and white orb flew from the first generation palace. Now Lin Moyu finally understood the origin of that orb. It was the third eye of Heavenly Void Sun. Heavenly Void Sun had a third eye at his brow, but Lin Moyu didn't know if it was an innate trait or achieved through cultivation, only that it was unimaginably powerful. Now that third eye transformed into an orb and followed the domain seed into the distance, eventually landing in another region. The third generation Heavenly Void Palace rose from the ground. Simultaneously, the second-gen palace was thoroughly destroyed. Within the third-gen palace, a new palace master was born, one who wielded the orb and harnessed the power of yin and yang, using the domain seed as a foundation to evolve the third-generation domain. This time, the chaotic chi was used up. The primary force now was yin and yang. And though yin and yang are derived from chaos, they are not its equal. In addition, this was already the third iteration for the domain seed, which was, again, weaker than before. Thus, the third-generation domain was not as powerful as the previous two. But there was a benefit. Without chaos chi shrouding everything, the great Tao was revealed and cultivation became easier. The number of cultivators in the third domain greatly surpassed previous generations. However, there were fewer transcenders, and those who reached similar realms were not as strong as before. The first generation had 12 transcenders, the second had 8, and this third generation only 5, all taken by the green-robed and white-robed elders. With the appearance of 5 transcenders, the domain's power dropped sharply and could no longer produce new ones. A sigh sounded its fate. This time the disappointment was even greater, with a hint of anxiety as well. Heavenly Void Sun probably realized that he was running out of chances. The domain's seed was getting weaker, and with further evolutions it might be impossible to produce even a single transcender. Clearly, he was trying to use the evolution of the domain to achieve something, but it was not under his control. He could only try and try again, hopping and waiting. So much had been sacrificed he'd risked even himself. If all failed, not even Heavenly Void Sun could bear the price. Yet Lin Moyu was turning over another question in his mind. Every generation's transcenders were being taken away by the green-robed and white-robed elders. What exactly was the intention of these two heavenly supremes? Was Heavenly Void Sun acting of his own will, or was he forced into this by greater powers? With the collapse of the third-generation domain, the domain seed flew out again. From the first-generation palace, a slumbering coffin flew forth as well, accompanying the domain seed in the creation of the fourth-gen palace. This time Lin Moyu saw clearly. Heavenly Void Sun placed a portion of his own soul into the slumbering coffin. So, in the slumbering coffin was a piece of Heavenly Void Sun's soul all along. Now Lin Moyu finally had an answer. His entire quest was to gather together these fragments, the soul, the third eye, and the plaque, in order to restore Heavenly Void Sun's wholeness. But there was a doubt. What was within that slumbering coffin he'd found in the mysterious garden so long ago? If it was a fragment of Heavenly Void Sun's soul, why did it end up in a mysterious garden instead of being kept in one of the Heavenly Void palaces? The fourth-generation palace rose up, with a piece of Heavenly Void Sun's soul as its core, and he continued the process again. The fourth-generation domain was dominated by the 5 elements Tao, yet each cycle was noticeably weakened from the last. A vast number of cultivators sprang up in this world, their numbers peaking, but in the end only 2 managed to transcend. Again, they were taken away by the green-robed and white-robed elders, and again, with a long sigh, Heavenly Void Sun moved the process on. The domain seed continued its journey, flying through the Heavenly Void Land, seeking a suitable site to create the 5th-gen palace. At this time, yet another slumbering coffin shot forth again, containing a fragment of Heavenly Void Sun's soul. But by now, most of his soul had been spent in the domain's evolution. Only a trace remained for the 4th generation, a mere wisp for the 5th. The 5th-generation palace emerged, starting the evolution of the current domain. But just then, an accident occurred. A power of unimaginable might crashed into the Heavenly Void Land, rending an enormous crack through it. The blow nearly shattered the entire Heavenly Void Land. Sounds of fury echoed from the void. A titanic battle erupted. Lin Moyu did not know who the combatants were. The aftermath buffeted the Heavenly Void Land without end, plunging everything into chaotic turmoil. The Heavenly Void Land still housed a sliver of Heavenly Void Sun's soul. His flesh, too, remained in the 1st-gen palace. With tremendous effort, he managed to rouse himself and stabilize the land. But after this battle, Lin Moyu could clearly sense that the Heavenly Void Land had changed. It seemed that Heavenly Void Sun had truly fallen into slumber, losing his grip over the Heavenly Void Land and the process of domain evolution. The 5th-generation palace master, born out of this revolution, began to devise his own plans. When developing the 5th domain, he deliberately sent the slumbering coffin containing the residual soul into chaos itself. He also began making preparations for his own escape. It was clear the 5th-gen palace master wanted to break free of his fate. He had no desire to become yet another casualty in the endless sacrificial cycle of domain evolution. He set up all manner of contingencies, withheld much of his power, and, using the chaos and confusion, sent his true self into the domain, hoping then to use the domain as a gateway to chaos. He also left behind an avatar, creating the illusion that his true body was dead. Meanwhile, in the chaos of the heavenly void land, another being who had long gained sentience began developing its own ambitions, the butler. While these two were carrying out their secret plans, neither realized that in every single cycle of domain evolution, there were things happening outside their knowledge. Chapter 42-49, I Bet on Your Victory. The Heavenly Void record itself possesses the ability to record all that happens in the Heavenly Void land is written down, in exhaustive detail. Someday when Heavenly Void Son awakens, all he needs is a thought to know everything that transpired. From the time the second-generation domain evolved, something appeared in the Heavenly Void Palace that shouldn't have, the Fairy of Tribulation. Every successive palace master studied the fairy, but Heavenly Void Son, aiming for perfect evolution in each domain, always stayed behind the scenes, never intervened directly. So none of those palace masters knew the fairy's origins. At most, they learned a bit of the surface. It's only after they died that they learned the truth. In fact, everything was within Heavenly Void Son's grasp from the start. Until the fifth-generation domain, due to outside interference, things changed. Heavenly Void Son lost his absolute control over the Heavenly Void land. The butler appeared and did many things, though in truth these were petty little schemes, nothing substantial. The butler is a being nurtured by the Heavenly Void land itself, born with no chance for transcendence. All his dreams were illusions. The selfishness bred by the fifth-generation palace master did have some effect. He really did win himself a few chances. But those chances were not his alone to control, because besides the Heavenly Void Son, out there waited two old fellows in green and white robes, watching. The fifth palace master thought he was playing chess, but in truth, he was merely a pawn in someone else's greater game. The fifth domain's evolution was pretty much as Lin Moyu had previously witnessed, but this time, watching it again, he saw many new details. Because of all that selfish manipulation, the fifth domain was flawed with many defects. The domain seed was already weak, and without Heavenly Void Son's guidance, the domain's great Taos were chaotic, 1,000 paths, none supreme. With things as they were, there could be many cultivators, but it was nearly impossible for any to transcend. With innate flaws in the domain, someone like the Kunlun Emperor, born into the Void Realm, only had the faintest sliver of hope for ascension, but he brought his own downfall as well. As the fifth palace master laid his traps, Lin Moyu saw the green-robed elder appear. Right after the domain's creation, the green robe showed up. Lin Moyu guessed it was to stop the fifth palace master. But then, all at once, the green-robed elder withdrew because a great Tao suddenly emerged within the ancestral land of origins. That great Tao was none other than the Immortality Tao. Seeing the Immortality Tao, even as a bystander, Lin Moyu was stunned. He hadn't even noticed where the Immortality Tao came from. One moment, it was just there. When it appeared, the fifth palace master was engrossed in studying the Fairy of Tribulation and paid it no mind. At that time, he'd already let the domain evolve at its own pace, weaving his plans to break free from Heavenly Void Son's control and win his own freedom. That slumbering coffin containing Heavenly Void Son's soul, though thrown into chaos by the fifth master, for some reason returned to the fifth domain. Perhaps the chaos had affected it, causing it to open and Heavenly Void Son's remnant soul to awaken. He built his own power within the domain, conquered several worlds and launched campaigns against others. Lin Moyu noted his techniques were oddly familiar, 6 or 7 parts like his own, but still distinct. At first, Heavenly Void Son's soul was strong, but as time passed he grew weaker until his empire collapsed, his worlds shattering around him. Some made it to the ancestral land of origins and finally became part of the Boundary Sea world. Others wandered lost in cracks of time and space, surfacing only now and again. One such event was the appearance of the mysterious manor. By then they were greatly weakened, their records vague and incomplete. The beast skin Lin Moyu acquired had once detailed their ancient glory, but now all of it was illusion, nothing real. Researching it would yield no truths. What shouldn't have existed in the domain's evolution was eventually corrected, setting everything back on the intended course. Despite his power, Heavenly Void Sun's tiny sliver of soul, after all its ordeals, slumber, chaos, awakening, was left utterly weak. Each use of power spent more than could be replaced, while the domain's cultivators only grew stronger. So naturally he fell in the end. And at last, the slumbering coffin was recovered by Lin Moyu, restored to the Heavenly Void Land and made complete once again. What truly puzzled Lin Moyu was why Heavenly Void Sun's methods so closely resembled his own. And even more, that something seemed missing from the process of the domain's evolution. The Heavenly Void Land was supposed to record every detail of every evolution, leaving nothing from real to virtual, not a single thing left unnoted. Yet Lin Moyu found some of his own memories missing. His little world where he started did not appear anywhere. From the very beginning, it was as if he entered the greater world fully formed. That entire set of experiences seemed to have been deliberately hidden. Then there was the system that had helped him through his earliest stages, established his foundation, and disappeared after leaving the virtual world. It too was absent. These two remain mysteries. Lin Moyu guessed that perhaps his little world had to do with the green-robed elder. As for the system, that was harder to pinpoint. Why did the appearance of the immortality Tao make the green-robed elder withdraw? Does that mean Heavenly Void Sun was waiting for the immortality Tao, and as the immortality Tao's master, was he waiting all this time for me? The vision shattered, Lin Moyu's consciousness returned to the first-generation Heavenly Void Palace. Heavenly Void Sun gazed at him and said, "You understand now, don't you?" Lin Moyu nodded, "I understand some." Heavenly Void Sun cut him off, "That's enough, anything more you must seek for yourself, some things cannot be said even asked." Lin Moyu frowned. Heavenly Void Sun seemed to be speaking in riddles. Heavenly Void Sun continued, "Don't think I refuse you out of ill will. In time, when you reach perfection in chaos, you'll understand. Chaos is complicated beyond imagining. Many eyes are on that one position." That position, Lin Moyu couldn't help thinking, was he talking about the seat of Supreme? Was becoming a Supreme not just a matter of cultivation, but something else? He decided to trust Heavenly Void Sun's words and let the matter rest. Instead, he asked, "What will you do about the butler and the fifth palace master?" Heavenly Void Sun replied, "Nothing needs to be done. They are ants. Give them hope time and again, only to utterly snuff it out after all their striving. That is the best outcome." A fatal blow, pure psychological destruction. Heavenly Void Sun seemed to do nothing, yet had already decided the most hopeless fate. Time and again, hope is handed out, then in the end ripped away. Just thinking about it sent chills down Lin Moyu's spine. In Heavenly Void Sun's eyes, the butler was a mere ant, and the fifth palace master only a slightly bigger ant, no more. Heavenly Void Sun said, "Now that I'm awake, something interesting caught my eye. As for the fifth, please, Taoist, leave him to you." Lin Moyu's mind raced at these words. Suddenly, it dawned on him, "Heavenly Void Taoist, do you mean I will have to battle him?" Heavenly Void Sun nodded, "Yes, a fight to the death, but I bet on you to win." Lin Moyu understood, murmuring to himself, so the tampering in the domain core was his handiwork. He remembered the vortex behind the core's divine rune, endlessly siphoning domain power and fortune. Such a thing couldn't be done by an outsider. But if it was fifth, it all made sense. Heavenly Void Sun said nothing, implicitly confirming it. Lin Moyu knew this battle could no longer be avoided. Chapter 4250, The Greatest Secret. After chatting with Heavenly Void Sun Tiangxuzi for a while, Lin Moyu began asking about things he hadn't understood before. Heavenly Void Sun answered each question in detail, showing not the slightest impatience. The two conversed like longtime friends. As their discussion went on, Lin Moyu even developed the illusion that Heavenly Void Sun held a degree of respect for him. For someone perfected at the Chaos Realm to treat a yet untranscended being as an equal was already remarkable. If such a being even showed Lin Moyu genuine respect, it truly defied explanation. Lin Moyu instinctively thought of the immortality Great Tao. He recalled how Heavenly Void Sun had waited for lifetimes, seemingly for that very Tao. Even the green-robed elder who had originally planned to wipe out the world changed his mind the instant the immortality Great Tao appeared. All of it made Lin Moyu wonder if he was the reincarnation of some great figure. That great figure must have been a supreme Adazan, only someone on the same level as the green-robed elder could earn such treatment from Heavenly Void Sun, could command such special attention from the green-robed elder. From these speculations, the words Calamity Supreme, Tianzai Dazan boldly appeared in his mind. Lin Moyu couldn't help doubting, was he truly the reincarnation of the Calamity Supreme? If so, a lot made sense. It would explain why the green-robed elder acted as he did. But even if he guessed right, that was something he could never utter aloud. Because he had seen how the Calamity Supreme fell to his demise fighting his way to the uttermost limits of chaos, encountering some unimaginable existence and dying on the spot. If such a being truly existed, Lin Moyu had every reason to believe it was all-knowing. That would also explain why Heavenly Void Sun spoke so circumspectly, why he left so much unsaid. Heavenly Void Sun had told Lin Moyu that the human heart is unfathomable, and if you speak a thing aloud, even with no living soul to hear, still heaven and earth may know. The green-robed elder was also extremely careful, once saying, "Walls have ears." At the time, Lin Moyu thought the green robe was simply wary of enemies and unnecessarily cautious, but now he understood. Perhaps they didn't fear a tangible rival, but some nameless presence, even one whose form they themselves could not grasp, possessing omniscience. Seeing Lin Moyu suddenly fall silent, Heavenly Void Sun wore a knowing smile. Evidently, all their previous conversation had its deeper intent, and now Lin Moyu finally grasped it. Lin Moyu sketched out a divine rune, a complex, three-dimensional sigil, more like a picture than a formation and serving no practical function. Only one deeply versed in the Tao of divine runes could understand its meaning. Lin Moyu believed Heavenly Void Sun would certainly understand the fifth-generation palace master's mastery of runes had, after all, come from Heavenly Void Sun. Lin Moyu felt Heavenly Void Sun's divine rune skills were at least equal to or stronger than his own. He would surely be able to read it. The rune was perfectly round, layered over itself some 10 times, each layer with a single purpose: to screen, to block perception, to block spying, to block auras, with the exception of what the naked eye could see. Lin Moyu had no idea if his method would really work, but it gave him peace of mind to try. At the center of the rune, a divine symbol was shattered into hundreds of fragments, the pieces all still connected by faint strands. These fragments could be assembled into many different runes, but in truth there was only one real answer. Heavenly Void Sun saw through Lin Moyu's technique. "You understand now." Lin Moyu nodded, tapping his head. "It's all in here." Heavenly Void Sun nodded as well. "Knowing is enough." Lin Moyu asked, "It's hard, isn't it?" Heavenly Void Sun's expression grew 3 parts grave, but the answer was unexpected. "I do not know." After thinking for a second, Lin Moyu understood. What he meant was not that he didn't know how hard it was, but that he didn't know the depth of the adversary, nor their true strength. It was beyond even the concept of difficulty. Lin Moyu erased the rune. Everything was clear, there was nothing more to discuss. Many answers were now kept safely in Lin Moyu's heart, never to be known by outsiders. Heavenly Void Taoist, what comes next? Lin Moyu knew that now Heavenly Void Sun was awake, there must be something more ahead. Heavenly Void Sun looked all around. With 5 domains evolved from this place plus the Heavenly Void Land, this makes it possible to evolve a 6th domain here. As he spoke, his third eye in the center of his brow slowly opened, clearly passing the answer to Lin Moyu. Lin Moyu immediately understood, bowed, and said, "Thank you, Taoist." Heavenly Void Sun shook his head. "This is simply what I ought to do, besides I have my own motives, no need for such courtesy, Taoist." Lin Moyu replied, "If all goes as hoped, whatever Heavenly Void Taoist asks of me in the future, so long as it's in my power, I vow to help." Heavenly Void Sun chuckled, "Very well." The Fairy of Tribulation departed the 1st-generation palace and headed back for the 5th palace. Inside the fairy, Lin Moyu was left deeply unsettled. On the surface, this journey didn't seem to yield much, but in fact, he had unveiled a piece of the greatest secret in all of chaos. There was a 19 in 20 chance he was the reincarnation of the Calamity Supreme, and the reason for the Supreme's demise was precisely this secret. The secret was so immense that even Supremes like the green-robed elder didn't dare to speak of it openly. But maybe it wasn't a matter of daring, not afraid to speak, but cannot speak. Lin Moyu revised his thinking. He realized the green robe was probably arranging an undertaking of staggering scale. Until it was completed, nothing could be said. Any premature slip would ruin the whole scheme. And the entire secret was coded into the divine rune he had just drawn. Within Lin Moyu's own mind resided that very divine rune, the one he'd shown Heavenly Void Sun. The difference was, in his own mind the rune was whole, the one true answer. The meaning it represented was very simple, a single word, Tao. By synthesizing all his analysis, he arrived at this ultimate answer. At the end of chaos, the thing that destroyed the Calamity Supreme was the Tao. As for what the Tao truly was other than Calamity Supreme himself, perhaps no one else knew. It was something nameless, something omniscient, a being wholly all-knowing. Speak of it and it would know. A word uttered even 100 million years ago could be plucked from the flow of time by such an existence. With an entity like that, all plans and stratagems were just child's play. The only thing it could not penetrate was the human heart. Thus, speak nothing, hint nothing, do nothing to catch its attention. Everything must be silent, secret until the very end. That was the final answer Lin Moyu arrived at, once all things made sense. At last he had a clear goal. He must transcend not ordinary transcendence but something greater. If he only achieved ordinary transcendence, even if he regained the Calamity Supreme's place, nothing would change. The Calamity Supreme was obliterated in an instant. The gulf between the adversaries was obvious. And the key to everything was hidden in Heavenly Void Sun's last words. Within the Heavenly Void Land, 5 domain worlds had formed, together with the Void Land itself. That made 6. Lin Moyu possessed 3 domains already. The vast world, the spirit marvel domain, though damaged, it was healing, and the key Tao domain, Chinese letter, which also counted. With the 6 domains of the Void Land, if he succeeded, he could have 9 domains in total. And 9 is the number of ultimate extremity, a mystical, transcendent number, both a limit and the foundation for surpassing all limits. Chapter 42:51, Today I Grant You Death. The Fairy of Tribulation, Du Zhou, returned to the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace, flying directly into the central Heavenly Void Tower. 5th opened the gate, allowing Lin Moyu inside. On the 9th floor, Lin Moyu disembarked from the ferry and entered the area under 5th's control. Did you gain anything, Taoist? 5th's voice was low, clearly suppressing an urgent longing inside. Lin Moyu now understood well what he yearned for: transcendence, escape from the shackles of the Heavenly Void Land, and true freedom. Yet, given his identity, that would be difficult to realize. So he was desperate for information about the other Heavenly Void Palaces, especially the 1st generation palace, hoping to find a chance for himself there. Naturally, Lin Moyu would not reveal the matter of the Heavenly Void Sun to him. He calmly recited the explanation he'd already prepared. The 4th generation palace was based on the power of the 5 elements. It's now collapsed. The 5 elements inside are in chaos. I flew a circle through it with the fairy and found nothing. 5th immediately asked, what about the central main hall? Lin Moyu shook his head. Collapsed, just ruins left. I checked it but there was nothing. The 3rd palace was based on the power of yin and yang. The palace master back then used yin and yang to evolve the domain. I could sense the domain was powerful, but unfortunately it too is gone, with nothing remaining. As for the 2nd palace, it imitated chaotic chi, stronger than the 3rd palace, but it's collapsed as well, though it left behind a plaque. 5th cut him off. What kind of plaque? Lin Moyu took out the plaque from the Heavenly Void Sun. This was the plaque that seemed like a memorial tablet but wasn't. The 3 characters for Heavenly Void Sun honor once glimmered at the top, but now only the last 2 remain. 5th accepted the plaque, studying it for some time, his gaze heavy and somber. Lin Moyu knew this was normal. The plaque belonged to the heavenly void sun, carrying his aura, and fifth, as one nurtured by the evolutionary process of the heavenly void palace, traced his route to the heavenly void sun. The aura on the plaque was as if seeing his own ancestor, understandably mixed feelings. Without waiting for Lin Moyu's permission, Fifth put the plaque away. And did you finally visit the first heavenly void palace? Was there anything there? Lin Moyu replied, the first palace hasn't collapsed, but inside there's nothing, just a statue. What statue? Fifth probed. Lin Moyu answered, the same kind as inside the Ferry of Tribulation. Surely Senior has seen it. Fifth nodded. He had indeed seen that statue in the ferry, though he didn't have the Calamity Scepter and didn't know who it represented. Did you see anything else, Taoist? He pressed, clearly hopping for more information. Lin Moyu shook his head. That's all, Senior. I don't know if it's any help to you. Fifth said, it appears things aren't as I imagined. Each generation of the Heavenly Void Palace erases the last, such is fate, unchangeable. Perhaps the ferry is still a slim hope, but it's so hard to fully refine. Even just the central region is difficult. And to think you, Taoist, managed to erase my brand from the ferry, that means you have refined the central region completely. As he spoke, Fifth's tone grew lower and lower, and at last boomed like thunder. The intonation had changed. There was now a clear hostility toward Lin Moyu. Clearly, Lin Moyu's erasure of Fifth's soul mark within the ferry had filled him with resentment. This meant Lin Moyu was now the ferry's sole controller. The item that once belonged to Fifth had been seized. Fifth didn't say it directly, but he'd stopped pretending altogether. A surge of great power swept in from all sides, encasing the ferry in layers and blocking all routes of retreat. Lin Moyu said, Senior, you're planning to take back the ferry by force, aren't you? Fifth replied, tell me how you refined the Ferry of Tribulation and everything you saw and learned inside it. Do that, and I'll spare you. The ferry was unusual. Fifth could never fully master it, able only to leave a mark buried in the central region, at most being one controller. Kunlun Emperor, less powerful, left a shallower mark but also counted as a controller. Fifth had tolerated it because he hoped Kunlun Emperor would travel the domain for him. But what Kunlun Emperor learned from inside the ferry was limited. Fifth never realized that Lin Moyu would be able to fully refine the vessel, doing so while in other heavenly void palaces and thus escaping Fifth's senses. Not until Lin Moyu returned did he know. Now he urgently wanted to know just how Lin Moyu had refined the ferry and what secret knowledge he had gleaned within. Lin Moyu said, are you really resolved to use force? Fifth's brow furrowed. He sensed something was off. Lin Moyu continued, ever since we met, 1 out of every 10 things you've said was a lie. With so much truth and falsity mixed, have you considered I could lie too? Fifth's voice grew cold. What did you really see? Lin Moyu said, originally I didn't intend to fight. After all, a certain senior once said he wanted to destroy not only bodies but also hope and liked to play with his prey a bit longer. But since you're determined to take the ferry from me, you can't blame me for what comes next. When Lin Moyu spoke the words Heavenly Void Sun, Fifth blew up in sudden shock and rage. Just then the plaque in his hand flared to life, unleashing a mighty force that sealed all directions, cutting everything off. Fifth's expression changed dramatically. What did you do? In this moment, his bond with the Heavenly Void Palace was utterly severed. He had lost all power over the palace. At the same time, the connection to his true form snapped as well. Fifth was now nothing but a true remnant soul without any backup at all. This wasn't something an ordinary person could manage, though Fifth was only a remnant. He was at least Chaos Realm level. The plaque glowed, the 3 characters Heavenly Void Sun floating across its surface. Lin Moyu now clearly understood. This plaque was a Chaos Domain Lord's token. It was an artifact condensed by a Perfection Chaos Realm powerhouse. Using the power of his own domain, it could channel great power and serve as a vessel for force. When evolving the 2nd Gen Palace, Heavenly Void Sun had used this token as a focal link, providing power to aid the palace's birth. Originally, Heavenly Void Sun had wanted to see how far Fifth would go, giving a glimmer of hope, only to later destroy its psychological torment as the final blow. But Lin Moyu saw no reason to let dreams fester. He decided in the end to lure and kill him. If Fifth did nothing, then let Heavenly Void Sun toy with him. If he made a move, then he would be slain. Of course, this was only the end of the avatar for his true body. That would be Lin Moyu's concern. From the Chaos Domain Lord's token, Heavenly Void Sun's voice rang out, "You are a child I nurtured, yet you gave in to selfishness and dared to betray. Today, I grant you death." A titanic hand reached from the plaque, grabbing at Fifth. Despite his great power, Fifth was as helpless as a child before it, unable even to resist. It was a fundamental suppression. He simply had no power left to fight. Chapter 4252, Return to the Beast Abyss. Just as Heavenly Void Sun had said, in his eyes, the fifth-generation Palace Master was nothing but an ant. He could be crushed at any time. This Chaos Domain Lord's plaque placed in the fifth palace was basically a token of death. At any moment, Heavenly Void Sun could execute Fifth. Now completely seized by Heavenly Void Sun, Fifth struggled with all his might, but it was utterly futile. Gritting his teeth, Fifth stared desperately at Lin Moyu. "If I die, my true body will sense it. The entire domain will perish along with me." Lin Moyu shook his head. "You still don't understand your situation. You were birthed by Senior Heavenly Void, so if you die, it isn't really you dying, just your consciousness. You will always remain here, and in the end, you'll be very obedient." Hearing Lin Moyu's words, Fifth's face twisted. He understood what Lin Moyu meant. There are many ways to kill. Total destruction of body and soul is just one. Another is to erase only the consciousness, leaving the being apparently alive, but in truth, it is someone else and the original personality is dead. Fifth's true body was not here and was tied directly to the domain that was his confidence. But facing Heavenly Void Sun, such confidence was meaningless. Heavenly Void Sun demonstrated with action, an ant is an ant. His giant hand squeezed, and Fifth's remnant soul was distorted from the pressure. With a shrill scream, Fifth's remnant soul was crushed and smattered to bits, its consciousness utterly annihilated. "Gather!" Heavenly Void Sun gave a low command, and the shattered soul fragments reassembled, swiftly reforming. The remnant soul of Fifth returned, but it was no longer the same. While the fragments were identical, the consciousness was entirely new. He now bowed low at the feet of Heavenly Void Sun, full of deference. Heavenly Void Sun said quietly, "The words of Taoist Lin are my words, do you understand?" The remnant soul of Fifth respectfully replied, "Fifth understands." Heavenly Void Sun turned to Lin Moyu. "Taoist Lin, I'll leave him to you." Lin Moyu nodded. "Safe journey, Senior." Heavenly Void Sun withdrew into the Chaos Domain Lord's plaque, which split the void and vanished. Lin Moyu faced the remnant soul of Fifth. "So, tell me, what is your real relationship with your true body?" The remnant soul respectfully answered, "Back then, to gain freedom, I split my soul in two, one primary, one secondary. Each soul was independent and had its own consciousness, an attempt to fool the Heavenly Void Land." Lin Moyu asked, "And then, continue." Fifth continued, "At the time, a great war was raging. The Heavenly Void Land was unstable with countless spatial rifts. Taking advantage of these, the main soul and the physical body left the Heavenly Void Land, intending to enter the chaos. But the restrictions of the Heavenly Void Land still existed, and it was impossible to enter chaos. The true body could only merge with the domain, absorb its fortune, refine chaotic chi, and seek other methods. By now, my true body has almost fully fused with the domain. Its thoughts permeate the domain core. If it learns of the appearance of a Heavenly Void Palace, it will explode its own consciousness, taking all living beings in the domain down with it." Lin Moyu frowned. "Why so extreme?" Heavenly Void Sun for now could not leave the Heavenly Void Land. Killing the remnant soul did not threaten Fifth's main body, so why would Fifth's true body be so quick to threaten mutual destruction? The remnant soul explained, "I know Heavenly Void Sun has always been waiting for something. This domain isn't perfect, but he hasn't destroyed it, meaning there is something here in the domain that he's waiting for." It turned out Fifth was observant. He'd realized this point and used it as leverage. Indeed, Heavenly Void Sun was waiting, and the object of his wait was here. But at the time when Heavenly Void Sun had fallen into slumber, the one who almost destroyed the domain wasn't him, it was the green robe. Now none of that mattered. By chance, Fifth really had made the correct wager. For now, his true body was safe, no one would or could move against it. Heavenly Void Sun couldn't, Green Robe wouldn't, the resolution of Fifth's true body would fall to Lin Moyu himself. Lin Moyu asked, with your current condition, will your true body sense anything? The remnant soul said, no, we are fundamentally two independent entities only tied by soul connection. If he achieves transcendence, I can give up my own consciousness and merge with him. Lin Moyu nodded, then continue to play the role of Fifth Palace Master, stay here and perform as needed. I will, the remnant soul replied deferentially. This resolved that matter completely. As for the Kunlun Emperor and the butler, Lin Moyu didn't care at all, their fates weren't his concern. Everyone had their own destiny, success or failure, fate had already decided. He had much greater, far more important things to do. To achieve Advk transcendence, fully refine the Fairy of Tribulation, obtain the fifth gemstone and complete the Catastrophic Scepter. Ultimately, he would likely have to confront that powerful and terrifying presence, and he did not know whether he would survive. Everything was unknown, and the pressure moving forward was immense. The Fairy of Tribulation left the heavenly void land, flying out from the Yellow Springs and advancing along the river within the Beast Abyss. Sensing the atmosphere in the Beast Abyss, Lin Moyu exhaled deeply. At last he was back. After all, this was the world he was familiar with. Compared to the heavenly void land, he felt much more at ease here. He released Little Python, who curiously spun around inside the Fairy of Tribulation. Master, where is this? Lin Moyu replied, inside the Fairy of Tribulation. Ah, Little Python squealed in fright, shouting, is this really the Fairy of Tribulation? Lin Moyu said, calm down, no need to panic. Little Python's voice trembled, but in the legends the Fairy of Tribulation is terribly dangerous. You go in, you never come out. Lin Moyu smiled but didn't answer. The Fairy of Tribulation was indeed dangerous, but not as bad as legend. Its greatest usefulness was safety, insurance. The fairy followed the river to its end. At the end of the Yellow Springs, huge fissures barred the way. Lines of void beasts moved along the fissures, while from within, great winds rushed skyward. With the wind came many powerful living beings. These creatures came from every corner of the domain, representing countless worlds. They were beings from the real world. After death, real-world beings arrive here to join the hordes of void beasts, together forming endless processions, wandering in confusion. The fairy soared overhead. The wind battered its hull, causing it to rumble. The wind carried immense attacking power. Without the fairy, even a great Tao Lord would be injured here. The lines of gathered souls stretched endlessly into the distance. In the blink of an eye, the fairy had flown 1,000,000 miles past them. Suddenly, Little Python called out, Master, there's something ahead. I see it, no need to fuss. Lin Moyu had already spotted it. Ahead, a patch of white fog rose, suddenly transforming into a monstrous wave that swept wildly through the fissured land. The huge wave engulfed countless souls, carrying them away, vanishing without a trace. Arrays appeared on the ground, flinging waves towards different regions and sweeping away more souls. Some giant waves surged out from within the fissures, combining with the roaring winds to take away yet more souls. Little Python murmured, Master, where did they go? Lin Moyu replied, to reincarnation. These beings were not dead, they were simply swept away by the waves, entering their next cycle of rebirth. What they would reincarnate as depended on luck, karma, strength, and the rules of this place. Amid the crashing waves, a beastly roar sounded ahead. A huge beast appeared. It looked like a giant lion, its whole body ablaze, radiating an aura close to the eternal realm. It charged at the fairy, but before it could get close, another gigantic beast appeared and swatted it back like a toy. Chapter 4253, Lillian's Resurrection. The soulless beast appeared and smacked the flame lion, flying away. The flame lion tumbled back hundreds of miles, roaring furiously the whole way. Soon, more flame lions came flying in from afar, and within the great waves across the ground, several lions exuding steaming water vapor emerged. Lin Moyu murmured to himself, yin-yang divine lions, guardian beasts of the beast abyss. Little Python was puzzled, isn't this just water and fire? Lin Moyu smiled faintly, water and fire are just appearances, the core is yin and yang, but that doesn't really matter now. He sent a mental message to the soulless beast, make them move aside. The soulless beast accepted the command and let out a series of roars. The rules of heaven and earth themselves trembled, a vast pressure fell from the sky. The few yin-yang divine lions let out low whimpers, lowered their heads and retreated, making way immediately. Before the rule-bending might, the guardian beasts of the beast abyss yielded without a fight. The ferry of tribulation passed over them and sailed deeper into layers of mist. Ahead, flames surged through the sky, countless fiery meteors raining down from above. On the ground, vast quantities of water vapor soared up, meeting the fire meteors head-on in explosions of thunderous force. If one looked deeper, the collisions of fire and water grew ever more intense, finally transforming into a giant wall completely sealing the way forward. The soulless beast said, "Up ahead is the core of the beast abyss." Lin Moyu asked, "And what's beyond the core?" The soulless beast shook its head, "I don't know, I can't get there." By now, Lin Moyu already had an idea what lay beyond. "I'll go have a look." The soulless beast did not question him, only said, "I'll clear a path." The soulless beast manipulated the rules to create a channel through the region where water and fire intertwined. Lin Moyu guided the ferry of tribulation ahead, advancing until he touched an invisible barrier. It seemed he'd reached the end of the beast abyss, but Lin Moyu knew that wasn't really the case. He chose not to try smashing through with the ferry, though he could. Doing so would alarm what lay beyond. He left the ferry and reached out to the barrier, injecting soul force into it. At once, the invisible wall lit up. On the barrier surfaced a great many divine runes, which together formed a grand array. Both the style of the runes and the array itself were extremely familiar to Lin Moyu. He inscribed a few divine runes of his own and infused them at once. The runic array on the barrier subtly shifted and produced a gap. He did not enter, instead peering through the gap to observe what lay beyond. Beyond was a limited space, not large. Within it, someone was sleeping, from whose body issued countless fine threads that vanished into the void. "So you really are hiding here?" This was Lin Moyu's thought as he withdrew his runes, closing the gap and ceasing further observation. Though the figure within slept, he was also keenly alert. "Look too long, and you might be caught." This was the true body of the fifth-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master, hiding in the deepest point of the beast abyss. The countless threads coming off his body were the ones linking to the domain's core, transformed into the vortex by divine runes. The true body had been found, but now was not the time to act rashly. To deal with him, the core vortices had to be settled first, otherwise, if panicked, he truly had the power to blow up the core and drag down the entire domain with him. Lin Moyu also noticed, over countless years he had constantly drawn on the fate and power of the domain. The scars from splitting his soul ages ago were completely healed, and more, he had already attained initial accomplishment in the Chaos Realm, beyond Lin Moyu's current power to fight. Long ago, out of self-interest, Fifth did not perfect the domain's evolution and channeled away part of his strength instead. Later, when the Heavenly Void domain was attacked, he split his remaining soul again, one part left in the Heavenly Void land, the other with his body escaped to this place. Over these years, his wounds healed, but he was still not back at peak. At full strength, Fifth's original self would have had major accomplishment, Chaos Realm power truly a threat. Lin Moyu returned to the ferry and withdrew, moving quietly and at an unhurried pace so as not to attract attention. Only when at a great distance did the ferry speed up, flashing through both real and virtual worlds until it returned to the real world, where Lin Moyu's waiting flesh and soul recombined. A newcomer now walked the real world, Little Python, who had been brought out by the ferry of tribulation. With Little Python's current power, it was fine to stay in the real world for a while, but over the long term he would be forced out by the world's rules. That was easy to fix. Lin Moyu had the soulless beast forge a new body for Little Python, good enough for functional use. Whatever Lin Moyu asked, the soulless beast obeyed without hesitation right away. It used the power of the rules to give Little Python a practical, sufficient body. Just as Lin Moyu was about to enter the domain core again to continue refining the divine runes, he felt a call and his mind shifted into the vast world. In a certain place in the vast world, the origin force was incredibly thick, hundreds of times denser than anywhere else. There was not a single living being here. Lin Moyu had personally crafted this haven. Here sat a single crystal coffin, constantly absorbing origin force. Within the coffin, Lillian slept peacefully. Lin Moyu had moved Lillian through numerous places, waiting until the vast world's evolution was perfect enough, then transferred the crystal coffin here, arranging this special sanctuary for her. Over the years, the crystal coffin had absorbed untold quantities of origin power, strengthening Lillian until she surpassed even her previous peak. Lin Moyu watched with his own eyes as Lillian grew stronger. Long ago, her power had already reached the Tao's sovereign realm, yet she still never woke. Only after much study did Lin Moyu determine the issue. Lillian's true spirit had been damaged. Fortunately, Lillian's true spirit still existed within the origin continent. Lin Moyu found it and brought it into the vast world. He then used the power of the vast world's rules to nurture and restore Lillian's true spirit. After all this time, it finally began to heal. Within the crystal coffin, Lillian's brows shifted faintly and then her eyes slowly opened. A sleepy confusion filled her gaze, showing she had no clear idea what had happened. As the coffin lid opened, she saw Lin Moyu and let surprise cross her face. Lin Moyu smiled, "Welcome back, mighty fiend empress." Lillian was clearly still muddled and mumbled, "I'm not dead." Lin Moyu grinned, "You died but now you live again." Lillian realized Lin Moyu had saved her. Quietly she said, "Thank you." Lin Moyu shook his head, "No need for thanks. After all you gave, what I did doesn't count for much." Lillian was very straightforward, she didn't quibble further. She stepped out of the crystal coffin looking around. "Where is this?" Lin Moyu said, "This is my own world. I made a sanctuary to bring you back." "Sanctuary?" Lillian repeated softly, then, taking a step, immediately vanished, reappearing 1,000 miles away in an instant. Lillian exclaimed in surprise, "What's happening?" Lin Moyu smiled, "Your strength has increased greatly, but you can't fully control it yet. It will take time to adapt. For now, get used to your new power. I'll fill you in on what's happening outside, and once you're comfortable you can decide what you want for yourself, where you want to go." Lillian nodded gently, "All right, then I'll trouble you a little longer." Chapter 42-54, Changing Plans, dealing with the ghost husband first. Lin Moyu briefly recounted the events after Lillian's death. Once the demon empress, though not very high in realm, she had long held a prominent position, and her acceptance of things was naturally far beyond common folk. She quickly absorbed what Lin Moyu told her, understanding the environment she now found herself in. Lin Moyu said, "You are now a Tao sovereign and have accumulated vast amounts of origin qi in your body. Properly refining it will take only 100 years. And then you have the chance to step into the great Tao realm, living forever, never dying. If you have any requests, speak up. Whatever I can do, I will help you." A trace of loneliness appeared in Lillian's eyes. "I am truly alone now, no relatives, no friends, but my heart is unwilling. I want to rebuild the Soul Clan." Lin Moyu said, "Then I will find a world for you in the vast world, grant you privileges, and allow you to command some of the power of the great Tao." Lillian replied, "Good." Lin Moyu fully understood Lillian's thoughts. The depths of her soul bore a fixation. When her realm was low, she was naive and unaware this fixation was hidden. Later, as her realm rose, the fixation appeared, and for the sake of the vast world she sacrificed herself. Lin Moyu remembered this well, so he understood her clearly. When the Soul Dao Sovereign created the Soul Clan ages ago, it was only at the Dao Sovereign realm, and it wasn't true creation of life but fusion of existing beings. Such fusion is hard to replicate, but since Lillian wanted to try, Lin Moyu would not forbid it. Lin Moyu continued, I have sought the Soul Dao Sovereign but haven't found him. He might be dead, but I will continue searching. If one day I do find him, I will bring him here. Until then, you can attempt it yourself. Lillian said, whether or not he can be found no longer matters. What he could do, I can do now. I'm reborn, have no connection to who I was before. Alright, I'll take you to that world. By the time of the conversation, Lin Moyu had already chosen a world for Lillian. In the vast world there are many worlds, varying greatly in form and environment, so selecting a suitable one was not difficult. The world Lin Moyu chose was a small 1,000 world, of moderate size, about 10 times larger than Lillian's former small world. This world was ruled by the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, showing prominently in the environment. Many creatures lived there, some were naturally strong but lacked intelligence. Upon Lillian's descent, she would become the supreme being in that world. Lillian could use the creatures to experiment, perhaps she could truly revive the Soul Clan. Lin Moyu took Lillian on a tour of the world. How do you like it? Satisfied? Lillian said, very good, let's settle here. Lin Moyu nodded. I've imprinted your soul on the core of the world. You should feel you are the world's ruler. The power of the world is yours to command. Reach out anytime you need me. Lillian hummed, I understand. Then I wish you success. Call on me anytime, Lin Moyu said. With Lillian settled, one concern was lifted from his mind. This was a karmic debt owed to Lillian, and now it was finally resolved. Lillian began to live in this small 1,000 world. A palace rose there where she refined the massive origin chi she had accumulated over the years, preparing to break into the great Dao realm before making any further moves. Lin Moyu had already explained all key points of striving into the great Dao realm. Being in the vast world where Lin Moyu controlled everything and granted privileges, Lillian's success was guaranteed. After confirming everything was fine, Lin Moyu instructed the soulless beast to open a path for him, and he entered the domain core again. Earlier, he had paused progress in refinement while visiting the heavenly void land, but now it resumed. The domain core was filled with countless divine runes, each associated with a vortex connected to 5th-generation Palace Master's true body. Lin Moyu had to refine these runes quietly, without awakening him, to regain control. By his estimate, at least 80% of the runes needed refining. Only then could 5th's main body wake without destroying the domain, at most plunging it into chaos temporarily. As long as the domain survived, everything could be managed. But as more runes were refined, 5th would sense it and could awaken at any moment. Lin Moyu's plan was idealistic, the reality would certainly be worse. If 5th awakened, Lin Moyu would face a half-step Chaos Realm enemy, one he wasn't confident to defeat. While pondering in the domain core and understanding his enemy's identity and tactics, Lin Moyu discovered many flaws in his previous actions. I must change my strategy. The most important runes lie in the core region of the domain. They represent the origin Great Dao. The core's runes cannot be damaged. Similarly, the importance of runes differed drastically inside the domain core. The outer runes were insignificant compared to the core. From Lin Moyu's understanding, as long as the core runes were preserved, abandoning all outer runes was acceptable. Therefore, he must first refine the core runes, and before 5th's true body notices, refine all core runes entirely. Within the core lay a clone of ghost husband Gifu, who must be dealt with before the runes can be refined. The ghost husband's power was enormous. Lin Moyu believed he might be a perfection Chaos Realm existence. But his clone's presence in the domain core meant its realm was not beyond Eternal Realm. Still, a being of this level had many methods to rapidly ascend, greatly boosting power. If a battle erupts here, the runes would be severely affected. Though strong outside, the runes were fragile within the core. Such a strike would throw the entire domain into chaos, possibly shattering it and cause Fifth's true body to awaken, plunging everything into grave trouble. I must find a way to get him out of the domain core. This was the only way. Unless he was removed, Lin Moyu would not act. And he must do so silently, without alerting the third party. As Lin Moyu pondered methods, he silently crept into the core region, hiding in the distance, watching the ghost husband's clone. The runes were densest here, reinforcing Lin Moyu's earlier thought, no fighting in this place. Gradually, a plan formed in his mind, though he had no certainty of success. But at this point he had to try. If he didn't dare to attempt, it would become an endless deadlock. He began to draw divine runes, silently executing his plan within the domain core. The divine runes were the only solution. Rune after rune flew forth, converging into a circular orb. The orb quietly expanded, hiding any aura. At its center a vortex formed. Lin Moyu's inspiration came from the vortices created by the fifth palace master, but his vortex was stronger and more concentrated. Chapter 4255, Changing the Battlefield. Divine runes transform in myriad ways, and so do formations. The entire fifth-generation domain could be evolved from divine runes. With Lin Moyu's current mastery, he could freely achieve almost anything. The formation before him was exactly that. Lin Moyu pushed its power to the utmost according to his intent. This formation had only one function, to absorb, drawing the target from one end to the other. The simpler the function, the more powerful the effect. By Lin Moyu's estimate, this formation could even swallow an eternal existence, making it hard to escape for a short time. If the opponent were a soul body, the effect would be doubled. After setting the formation, Lin Moyu's palm displayed a phantom of the vast world. He connected the other end of the formation to a remote corner of the vast world. Lin Moyu's plan was to use this self-created formation to draw the ghost husband's soul clone into the vast world and deal with him there. The chance of success was over 70%, an acceptable risk. But Lin Moyu wasn't satisfied. He hoped to raise the success rate even further. The soulless beast was summoned by Lin Moyu, originally making a body for Little Python, but now forced to interrupt. "Master, please command." The soulless beast was respectfully obedient, ready to do whatever Lin Moyu asked. Lin Moyu said, "I will absorb the ghost husband into the vast world with the formation. He will inevitably resist, likely causing turmoil in the domain core, which may affect some divine runes. You must do two things: stabilize the divine runes, and if there is strength left, help me control the ghost husband's clone." Lin Moyu explained his plan to the soulless beast and asked for its opinion. The soulless beast was intelligent, and knowing the domain core's rules better than most, it considered the plan feasible. The remaining problem was the great battle. After getting the ghost husband into the vast world, Lin Moyu was prepared to pay any price. He adjusted the layout inside the vast world, trying to secure a large enough area. But this adjustment had limits. It was impossible to compress all the contained worlds indefinitely. When all was ready, Lin Moyu acted. The soulless beast wielded the rules to conceal Lin Moyu's presence as he silently approached the ghost husband's clone. It was Lin Moyu's first close encounter with the ghost husband's soul clone. Though only a fraction of a soul, it was still undeniably strong. Its power was innate. When Lin Moyu compared it to his own soul, he felt significantly inferior. The ghost husband's soul was like a thin, tough steel wire. Lin Moyu's soul was more like a boulder. Though the boulder was sturdy, it could be cut by the steel wire. Of course, Lin Moyu might fracture the wire, but this required subtlety. The soul clone radiated a chilling coldness. The nearer he got, the more oppressive it felt. When distance closed below 100 meters, Lin Moyu felt his soul was repeatedly frozen. This freezing differed from the cold of the ice jade mat. It was as if his thought flow was being suppressed, while hidden agitation threatened to erupt, a violent impulse to roar. He forced his Tao heart steady to resist the ghost husband's aura. The ghost husband influenced Lin Moyu, with only his natural aura indicating just how terrifying he was. Lin Moyu believed the ghost husband at peak was probably no weaker than Heavenly Void Sun. Calming himself, Lin Moyu advanced further, finally stopping 50 meters from the clone. Here he could see every detail. Behind the ghost husband's clone were 18 special divine runes. Unlike the 5th-generation palace master who extended countless hands to grasp every rune, the ghost husband only occupied 18. But these 18 divine runes were the root of the entire domain, the oldest appearing in its evolution. If reversed to origin, these 18 runes could reform the domain seed. If damaged, even if the domain itself didn't collapse, it would suffer severe injury. The ghost husband's power extended from behind him as 18 threads that tightly bound the 18 rune seeds. Lin Moyu whispered cautiously to the soulless beast, "Are you confident you can sever them?" The soulless beast understood immediately, answering confidently, "No problem." Though powerful, the ghost husband suppressed his strength to not violate the domain's rules, limiting himself to the peak of the eternal realm. As the administrator of the rules, the soulless beast transformed rule power into blades. It was no trouble at all to sever these strands. Lin Moyu then produced the formation pre-prepared. "All right, I'm acting now." Together, Lin Moyu and the soulless beast drew a deep breath. All or nothing. The formation activated, instantly spreading out. A vortex appeared in the core region. The soulless beast commanded the surrounding divine runes to disperse as far as possible, clearing space for Lin Moyu. The vortex was immediately pushed to the limit, a vast power crashing down on the ghost husband's clone. The clone awoke with a roar. He originally was sleeping and needed time to wake fully. This process was very brief, under 0.1 seconds, but enough time for Lin Moyu and the soulless beast to act. As he roared, a flash crossed behind him. A brilliant light formed from rule power and indestructible blades, severing the connection between the ghost husband and the 18 divine runes. The vortex's power concurrently burst stronger as Lin Moyu infused his soul power into the formation, intensifying it. The ghost husband's clone was uncontrollably pulled from its place and hurled toward the formation. Roaring in rage, the ghost husband unleashed tremendous fury, but it was useless. The formation's suction surpassed his limit. A terrifying aura burst forth, forming a giant hand that reached for Lin Moyu. Ice jade mat appeared beneath Lin Moyu's feet, cold energy gushing forth to freeze the ghost husband's aura. Seeing this, the ghost husband's aura shattered, cold ice cracking. He ceased attacking Lin Moyu and instead struck at the surrounding divine runes. The soulless beast wielded the rule power, pressing from all directions to force back the ghost husband's aura and protect the runes. Lin Moyu snorted coldly as he continued to strengthen the ice jade mat. Layers of chilling air surged toward the ghost husband. Though it didn't freeze him completely, it markedly slowed his movements. With their combined efforts, the ghost husband's clone could not resist and was forced into the vortex. At the other end of the formation, a phantom of the vast world appeared. The phantom conflicted with the domain core, causing spatial fractures. The soulless beast used the rules to stabilize space, but could only hold out so long. Go in. Lin Moyu kept pushing the formation, forcefully sucking the ghost husband's clone out of the domain core and into the vast world. The vast world phantom vanished instantly. Lin Moyu whispered, "I'll go kill him, hold down the fort here." The soulless beast softly affirmed, "Good."